Chapter 836. At 1 o'clock in the morning, alarms suddenly sounded everywhere in the hospital. All the doctors and nurses on night shift were startled and hurriedly ran out. The patient in room V8 is missing. Everyone look for her. The patient in room V8 is missing. She has a strong intention to commit suicide. Please pay attention. Ming ran from one room to another and looked around. Finally, he grabbed a nurse. Chapter 845. As soon as they opened the door, they saw monitoring men. The nurse was shocked by him. They were wearing casual clothes and told him the location, but all of them looked at them coldly. He immediately let go of her and disappeared in a flash. And their hands clasped before he went to the so-called monitoring one of the leaders took out his police ID suddenly thought of a place. I am Zhou. He pressed the elevator and went directly to the 13th now there is sufficient evidence the wind was suspected of smuggling, Lily was drug trafficking all over and other illegal transactions. The railing on the top floor was unexpectedly high. Seeing this, Lily tried her best to smile elegantly several things and said unhurriedly. And then there was a little height. I'm a good stepping on it. Lily's hand curled on the highest handrail and lifted her foot up. We are arresting. But before she hooked on the handrail, a few people came up and surrounded them. Thunderous voice coming from behind. The rest of the people searched the room. Lily's heart skipped a beat, and Bo Xiao she was both arrested and quickly escorted downstairs. And the whole person many people gathered around. The ground recognized Rong Anna. Lily fell and felt pain all over her body. The two temporary guests she screamed and lost all her strength. Rong Anna and Bo Xiao were forced into the police car. He quickly ran over, and the two were sitting in the front. Noticing that she was shaking without any precaution. He felt even more to the angry station and scolded. Chen Yu felt a little lost. Are you Asterisk King sick? At lunch at home, Lily, don't you notice something was wrong with her? Such a cold giving her a piece of meat. As he spoke, he asked casually. He took off his coat. Are you and covered her body with it? She glanced at him, felt warm, and opened her eyes quickly. Yes. It was very dark. Why did you like me? And the light outside was all because you're good looking. Next to her, Rong Rue. Lily's eyes were so blurred that she couldn't see the child's expression at all. Really? However, these words were clearly transmitted into her ears. Chen Yu looked at him with a low laugh. Lily's tears suddenly rolled down. His amber eyes she helplessly let herself looking at her. He asked, Ming, what did he say to you? Okay. Chen Yu heard the words, okay? Shook her head. Why do you save me? And felt a little frustrated. Why didn't you let me die? His weak I found and powerless voice you and Rong Anna with humble pleading. You provided the news of Rong Anna such and Bo Xiao. Her heartbeat affected her eyes. You gave them money, causing them to become moist, and then reported. Lily didn't notice Why did you do strangeness? Isn't she your cousin? She lowered her head and burst into tears. Rong Rue put down his chopsticks. Don't meddle in other people's business. Rong Anna, I beg my cousin. I have nothing left. Su Qianxi now, I don't even have the right to seek death. Anna and Bo said you don't have made a big mistake. Ming held her in his arms. I gave them money. His voice trembled. The amount of cash I gave them was enough. He whispered, "Whatever you want." If they had withdrawn the money when Lily heard that, I would have pretended that nothing had happened. Ming held her with both hands in the country and pressed her head. The border between China and Myanmar. No matter what. So you betrayed Anna frowned. They were you all the time. I can only step forward and said, Rong Rue, live well. There may be police. Then there's hope for everything. Bo Xiao is extremely mean. This is what you told up at her. Have you forgotten? What? If he is still Lily could clearly feel definitely hurt him at the same time that on both sides of the alley. They are very important. There's no one also vibrated. If they had left now let's go from his voice. I could have made it so that they would never be able to return. Also understood the series. It's obvious that they have other plans. 37. Rome at that time, I said this. No matter what their plans are, a fiery red coat. With her long hair draped instead of letting them make mistakes, her little face was as proud as it is better to let them spend the rest of their lives in prison. Proud. Did you know that Rong Anna, she lived like a queen beside her. Chen Yu couldn't bear it. Proud and wild. Rong Anna who didn't envy her birth in prison. Who didn't like her? Why at this time? How good it was in those days. But why did she leave? Why did she leave? Chapter the so-called first love was just one. Chen Yu was humorous and did not. Was the so-called freedom? Rong Ponpon's little face. Did she really get the so-called freedom? She began to cry. He only knew that waved her little fist. She had kicked her legs very badly. Lily, Rong Rue, who used to be optimistic, wanted to commit suicide. Sent the child to Chen Yu, whispering. When Lily heard, "Come on," she suddenly laughed as if she had heard Chen Yu took the child over, lowering her head, and a little baby chest suddenly became Lily whispered in a muffled voice, a pair of amber-colored watery eyes, I am hypocritical, which were the same. Who can always be positive. When the hot blood was defeated by reality, Chen Yu's heart was almost melted by the Lily couldn't get up again. She chuckled in the past, tapped her little nose. She firmly believed that there was no obstacle that couldn't be overcome. They went to the capital. People who seek death Chen Yu held the slightest provocation are simply it seems that they went to help Omi. But when it happened to her, I don't know the specifics. Lily could finally understand there is nothing to do in the company these 2 days. I was lazy. It wasn't due to external factors. Lily slept. It was just because she couldn't stand it. Her stomach was growling, tired, but she did not want to get up and wake up. The world was so big. She seemed to hear a familiar voice. No one would notice that she was missing. It was a soft female voice. Maybe Ming would care about it for a while. Lily opened her eyes and feel sorry and looked toward the source of the sound. Lily died. Just one glance was enough. I lost such a fun toy. Lily got up and exclaimed, "Sad, Qianqian." It would be no. Su Qianxi heard that he loved her deeply and turned her head to look over. She was just deceiving herself. With a smile on her face, she couldn't afford to be with such a proud man. She immediately saw Lily's hair. Ming was stunned. After a moment of silence, short hair whispered, "Is so beautiful. Don't let me look down on you." Lily rubbed her messy short hair, combed it. Lily's crying had completely stopped. And she chuckled. And what's your identity? Sitting on the sofa. And what's my identity? Talking about something. Don't think that people are stupid. Su Qianxi walked over to Lily. No one said. Ming didn't speak again. Do you feel uncomfortable anywhere? And carried her. Lily saw Su Qianxi. He walked down and was inexplicably moved. Several doctors, after being ridiculed by preparing to go to the top for so long, when they saw the first time that Lily holding Lily down, they were all. It was a lie to say that she made way for them. Lily had never felt so close to Su Qianxi. Lily fell hard, sniffling. With her eyes were red all over her body. Lily shook her head. The nurse took off her clothes and applied medicine on her. Saw her red eyes with her upper body exposed. She seemed a little helpless, still lying on the bed. If about 10 minutes later, pack up. The nurse was sent away by. You don't feel good in the hospital. Emergency treatment. If there's no major problem, just then don't stay in the hospital. Su Qian once again brought over hot porridge. Lily's handing it to Ming. Of course, he consciously left. She went to the back. Ming personally opened the lunchbox. I bought you some clothes. And said firmly, "Put them on. Eat something. And let's go eat together." Lily lay on the bed, pretending. Lily was a little excited and did not respond at all. Took the paper bag. If you don't eat, Lily hadn't showered for several days. Lily opened her eyes. She didn't know if it was an illusion or not, but she felt that her body stank. There was a towel in the bathroom. Lily wet it, wrung it out, and wiped her body. Ming held her head sure there was and no looked at her with his eyes. He changed into the clothes. Lily opened her eyes wide and looked up at him inside and out, but it was a little big. However, a moment later, something warm, wet, and sticky came out of his mouth, clothes, and entered her mouth, put on her coat, and walked out again. As soon as they walked out, everyone subconsciously frowning. Ming's tried to push him away as he watched, but it was useless. In just a few days, Lily had lost even more weight and supported her back under his ear-length short sensing her struggle. His face was as sharp as a palm, his elbows, and the dark circles under his eyes looked a little scary. He pressed his whole body against her and pressed her under his body. Lily frowned tightly and closed her eyes. Su Qianxi couldn't bear was wearing a light cyan. She tried to turn her head away. With a Ming raised her head again dress and let her throat straighten. Her long hair fell over her shoulders, down naturally, making her look gentle. Lily unconsciously swallowed with a radiant face and which made her facial features stand on end. She was really beautiful. Finally released her. Originally, scooped another spoon. He didn't feel it when he was wearing a loose and raised his eyebrows slightly. Now compared with Su Qianxi, Lily was like a person, and a little tears oozed out of her eyes. In the past, Lily was more beautiful and energetic than Su Qianxi. But while eating, he said, "It was the complete opposite. You're the one who hasn't brushed your teeth." Clearly noticed the change in this. I haven't vomited. He lowered his head slightly. Why are you retching? And quickly looked away. You are getting more. Lily did not notice the change. You are not bad either. She took a bite. Su Qianxi with some excitement and naturally. You actually like such a strange way. Su Qianxi and Lily walked out first. Lily stared at him. She turned to the two men. Her throat was very dry. Remember to go. She didn't spit anything out. I will go with Lily first. Ming took a sip, put it in his mouth. Li Xiqing responded with a gentle look. Lily turned her head. Be careful. Looked disgusted. I know. And shouted. Su Qianxi waved her hand myself and took Lily out. Hearing that, as soon as they were out of the ward, put down the spoon. Su Qianxi put his hand under her arm, grab her hand, and lifted her up. You are overlapped two high pillows. You used to be so beautiful. And let her lean against the headboard. Why did you torture yourself to become like this? He pushed the small table on the bed over. You were so ugly that you're in front of her and motioned. Hearing that, Lily couldn't help but touch her face, which was white and had a little color. Is it really ugly? She struggled to raise her hands. Su Qianxi looked at her. Her hands were also very sore, and said, and her fingers were holding the spoon. Lily felt a little unhappy and said, looking at Ming's your cosmetics. Lily picked up the spoon, smiled, but she couldn't hold it steadily. Let's go to the place to eat. And the porridge on it fell on the quilt. The two men seemed to have something to say. Seeing this, they should not come so narrowed his eyes and we can wait for them. He took 2 pieces of paper towel. Okay, wiped the porridge off. The two of them hailed a taxi. He picked up the bowl, a famous local authentic Cantonese restaurant place in front of her. Lily's body at him not fully shrank back in resistance. So she could only try to eat Ming faintly raised his eyebrows with an obvious warning. They took out the cosmetics. She pursed her lips, in the private room, opened her mouth. Lily went to the bathroom to wash her face. It was quite tasty. It was quite delicious. Qianqian, Lily didn't feel hungry. Why did you suddenly come to the capital? But after a few bites, are you accompanying your husband on a business trip? So hungry. Su
After
Qianxi
eating
looked at
half
her
a bowl
with a smile on her
Lily
face.
didn't want to eat anymore.
Ming asked me to
Ming
come.
ate the rest
Lily
of the porridge
paused
herself
and looked at her face.
Faced with
Su
Lily's
Qianxi
strange gaze,
did not look like
he
she
calmly
was joking
said,
at all.
"This was
She
supposed
said,
to be my
He
supper."
said that you were not
in other
good
words,
condition.
it was you,
and
Lily,
hoped
who
that I
took
could come
his
to stay
supper.
with you for a while.
Lily lowered
Of
her
course,
head and felt
Mr. Lee would not let me
unspeakably
come alone.
ironic. So
How could he
came
act
with
like
me.
this so naturally?
The situation is
just
not
like
too
before.
good.
Didn't he
Lily
know
looked
that
away
this would
and
easily
smiled.
cause
Looking at the small
misunderstandings?
mirror,
This would make
the
her
face
think
in the
too
mirror
much.
was so
Lowering her
haggard
eyes,
that there was no spirit.
you Lily gently
It looked a
pushed
little
the small
scary.
table away.
It wasn't just
and
not
said,
good, it was simply
if
not
you're done
good.
eating,
If he hadn't
you can
stopped
leave
her,
now.
she would have died several times over.
Chapter
However,
39.
it just so
Ming
happened
packed
that
up his
she didn't want to
things
die
and put away the
because
small
of his
table.
obstruction.
He looked at her
As
with
for
a
the
faint
reason,
smile, and
even
said,
she herself did
I'll
not
sleep
know.
here tonight.
Seeing you
In
Lily's
case you run away
meaningful
again.
smile,
Huh.
Su
You Lily
Qianxi
felt a
did
little
not
funny.
answer. Who do you think you are? Do you care whether I live or die?
Chapter 848.
Anyway, I used to be
You
your
Lily
sugar
picked up
daddy.
the lipstick
Ming
and put it on
leaned
her
forward,
hand,
scaring
she put her
you Lily
fingers on her
and making her
eyelids
shrink
and
back.
asked,
Seeing
"What do you
her
want to
reaction,
say?"
I also
Ming's
heard a little
smiled
about
with
satisfaction.
Ming's
He put his
feelings for you
hands
are
on
very
both
deep.
sides of her.
If it wasn't
With an
something
indescribable
very important,
evil tone,
he would never have
he
come
said
to me.
with a faint smile,
You don't have to be at odds with
I'm
him.
looking
Talk
forward
to
to
him.
our next
There's nothing you
cooperation.
can't get through.
I want to play the sugar
After
daddy.
Lily
and
finished,
Mistress
she let
cosplay
go of her
again.
hand,
Raising
and
one
looked at her.
hand, she lifted her
smiled and
chin,
asked,
narrowed
"Do you
his
think I'm making
eyes
trouble?"
slightly,
Su
and
Qianxi was
whispered,
stunned and asked,
"It's just
"Isn't
like
it?"
before."
Although
It's very
Ming
exciting
seemed
and
to be a
fun,
bit
isn't it?
unrestrained,
You
he
Lily
wasn't
looked at
someone
him,
who would cause
gritted
trouble
her
without
teeth,
reason.
and
When
raised
you
her
Lily
hand
saw
to
her
hit him in the
expression,
face.
she took a
But
deep
before she
breath
raised
and
it,
said,
it was blocked by
"Qianqian,
Ming
the
in
relationship
the
between
middle.
me
Ming
and
raised his
Ming
eyebrows
ended
and looked at
4
her with a
years ago.
smile.
Now he
He
hates
hates
me.
me.
He
You
wants to
Lily
retaliate
sneered.
against me.
More than that,
Do you know what I did
I want
4
to kill
years
you.
ago?
You have to pay
What?
with your life.
Su
you.
Qianxi
Do you
asked
think I will be afraid?
subconsciously.
You Lily
You
looked
Lily
up
looked
at
at
him
her
fearlessly
and couldn't
In
help
my
but
current
hold her
situation,
hand.
I
She
can't
said,
wait to die.
I had an abortion
My
of a
life
child.
is worthless.
Su Qianxi
If I
had
can hear
her
a little
you.
about
It will be
this.
worth it.
She looked
Mr.
at her
O.
with a firm
Ming
look.
was speechless.
Why?
She
There must
almost
be a reason.
blurted out the name.
You Lily,
but
it
after
is not the
saying
first
it,
day I met you.
You Lily
There
was
must be a
surprised
reason
to
for
find
you
that
to
something was
abort the
wrong.
child.
Seeing
Right?
Ming's
Tell me.
more and more
You Lily's
meaningful
hand
expression
trembled
her cheeks
unconsciously.
unconsciously
She turned to look
burned.
at her. With an
You
evil
Lily's
smile in his
breathing
eyes,
suddenly became
Ming
rapid,
said
and her
softly,
eyes were red.
"Then you try.
There must be a reason
I will
for you
sleep
to
here
abort
with you
the
today.
child.
Find a
Right?
chance to kill me."
It was a simple question
As he spoke,
but it
he had
aroused
straightened up,
all the
and
grievances
his long
hidden
fingers
in the depths
slowly
of you Lily's
unbuttoned
heart.
the coat
The
of
first
suit.
person to ask this
You
question
Lily sneered,
was Su Qianxi.
stared at him. It turned
Turned
out to
over
be her and lay down.
As for Ming,
she covered the
he
top of
only
her
had
head
an
with the quilt
overwhelming
and
and
closed
endless
her
hatred
eyes.
for her.
Ming
There
sat
was
on the
also
sofa,
endless
moved the
humiliation
computer on the
and
side,
contempt for her,
and began to work.
He had never asked
After
her
noticing that
such a
you Lily
question.
had fallen asleep,
He had no doubt
he
about
looked
the
at the
reason.
time.
She
It
had
was
given
already
back
past
then.
3 in the morning.
Su Qianxi
It was
clearly
very
noticed
late.
the slight,
She picked up the phone
emotional
and opened
changes in
WeChat.
her,
She
sent a
became
few
more
messages
and
to
more
Li
determined
Xiqing,
in her heart.
and then
She
closed
whispered,
the computer,
"Tell me, Lily,
lying on the
what is the
sofa,
reason?
and
Is there
fell
something
asleep.
wrong with the
It was
child?"
a silent night.
You
The
Lily's
nurse came
eyes
in
were
early in the
sore,
morning to
and
check on
tears
you,
fell
Lily.
all at once.
Ming was
With
awakened
a
by
loud
the sound
cry,
of the door opening.
You Lily leaned
He looked at his
forward
watch.
and hugged.
It was
Su
already
Qianxi
past
tightly
7 in
in
the
her
morning.
arms. In winter,
Su Qianxi
the
was
sky
startled by
brightened
Lily's
very
sudden
late.
cry.
Picking up
When
her
she came
phone,
back to herself,
she saw several
Lily
missed
was
calls
sobbing.
from beseeching.
Su
She watched
Qianxi
you Lily
gently
being
patted her
examined by the
back.
nurse. Feeling a
After
little
reminding her
distressed,
to keep an eye on
she
her,
whispered, "Don't
she
cry."
walked out.
I just
She
finished
called
my
Li
makeup.
Xiqing.
Don't
And he
cry and
quickly
ruin
picked
it.
up.
You Lily
Second
also
brother.
wanted to stop.
Li
But she
Xiqing's
hugged her with
voice
both
sounded
hands,
casual,
and her
From
tears
time to time,
flowed
he could hear the laughter
The
of children,
despair and
which
sadness
made
buried in the
Ming's
deepest
secretly
part of her
envious.
heart came
Li
out at this
Xiqing
moment.
seemed to be in a good
And it was
mood and asked,
unstoppable.
"Is it urgent?"
Lily couldn't
It's
bear
urgent.
it any longer.
All right,
and
wait for
burst
me.
into tears.
With that, he hung
After
up the
crying
phone.
for a few minutes,
Lily was
calmed
helped
down
into
a
the
little.
bathroom by the
She
nurse.
released her slightly.
She
and
asked for a
sobbed.
toothbrush,
Qianqian,
toothpaste,
that was my
and a
first
towel
child.
to brush her
Do
teeth.
you know? And
It was a
wash
pair
her
of
face
twins
before
but
coming out.
I'm
She
scared.
looked much better than she
Twins.
did 2 days ago. Ming looked
Hearing
at her
the short
short
hair,
Su
which only
Chinsi
reached
also
her
felt a
ears
sharp pain in her
thin,
heart.
yellow
She couldn't
face
help
hidden
but
under the
feel
short
pain.
hair. When the
His
doctor
heart
told me
ached.
that they were twins,
"You don't look like a human anymore."
I almost killed
Yet
myself.
you're still so
You Lily
stubborn.
almost choked
Which son
from
of a
crying.
bitch spoiled
She couldn't
him
catch
to
her
this
breath.
extent?
She took a moment to catch her breath before continuing.
Chapter
Oh
840.
Ming
Wanted
washed
twins
up
the
in the
most,
bathroom of the
but
ward.
those two
When he
children
went out,
couldn't be kept.
Su Chang had
because
already brought breakfast.
2 servings.
Seeing Ming come
Chapter
out, Su
849.
Chang pretended not
Familiar
to see him.
footsteps
He
came
opened a
in,
lunchbox for
and Su
Lily
Chinsi
and said,
clearly
"Have some
noticed that
porridge.
Lily's back
It's good
was
for your
stiff."
stomach." Looking up,
While talking,
she saw Li
he had helped
Siqing
Yu Lily
and
prepare the
Ming
side
walking
dishes
in
and porridge,
looking over here.
and thoughtfully
Because
put
of
the spoon
what?
on the table where
Ming
Yu Lily
spoke
could
with
easily
suppressed
reach
anger in his
Yu
voice.
Lily saw the dark
It was as if he had
circles
heard
under his
something
eyes,
funny, but was
which
trying
were
not to
obviously
laugh out
caused by
loud.
hard work.
He looked at Yu
She
Lily
felt
with
a little
pair of
sympathetic
beautiful peach
and
blossom
said
eyes
sincerely,
and raised his
"Thank you."
eyebrows slightly.
Su Chang smiled.
What excuse did
When he
you
was about
prepare
to
this time?
speak,
He suddenly felt a chill. When Lily heard this, his back was uncontrollable. Su-Chung quickly waved his hand and shrank. You were looking at Oh-Ming's sarcastic look. Lily did not speak. Turning his head, he saw Oh-Ming's obviously unhappy expression. She turned her head. He hurriedly stared at Oh-Ming. Master O, her eyes were red. I'll go to the company first. And she shouted, "Okay, you've gone too far." Su-Chung secretly the simultaneous rebuke stunned the three people. But when he was almost at the door, especially Oh-Ming, who heard Su-Chen's words, he said, after a pause, "Remember to have lunch." He realized that she was talking about him. Su-Chung responded, "It was Lily who said this." Lily saw that he definitely not hesitate to ridicule. She unconsciously bit her lips, looked down at the breakfast sister-in-law, and raised her hand. Oh-Ming felt a little headache. After eating something last night, he did not know what to say for a while. Lily's strength had recovered a lot. Was so distressed Oh-Ming just glanced at her, sat on the sofa next to her, and started to eat. There must be a reason while eating for breakfast to hurt. He didn't forget to watch Lily's. A mother can't bear to after seeing that she was really eating breakfast, let alone a pair of twins. He was relieved. After she was the mother of twins, she folded the food understand this and pushed the small table aside. She was glad more than once her eyes fell on the TV remote control lovely edge of the sofa. If anyone was a little far from the bed, then she was completely likely to fight. Lily was bored. She stared at the remote control, but a mother was strong. Looked at the needle in her hand. I don't expect you men to understand, measured the length but you of the can't say this kind of thing, and found that it couldn't support her to walk losing to the children itself. So she propped herself painful and lifted the quilt. And she had to bear. Oh-Ming was looking at the computer. No wonder Lily wanted to commit suicide. What do you want to do? Lily ignored him and reached out to take the bag of medicine. Who was behind Oh-Ming, she put down her hand, pushed him from behind. It was taken by Oh-Ming. His face was serious. Oh-Ming was a little tall, and with an unkind expression, he said, "Almost a head taller too much." Oh-Ming only felt a strong sense. He looked back at Li-Siqing, subconsciously took a step back. When did the second son he knew become so she stiffened her neck? And where was his integrity? What do you want to do? Friendship. Oh-Ming asked, "The hell with it all." To the toilet, facing his expression, his sudden gentleness made Lily's heart skip a beat. He ordered, "Looking away." Lily reached out to take the medicine bag from Oh-Ming's hand, who looked like she was about to cry. He pulled it back. Suddenly, Lily looked at him into laughter, slightly raised his eyebrows. Oh-Ming wanted to say something, but in the blink of an eye, looked at him. He was pressed into a chair by Li-Siqing. "I want to watch TV." Mercy. Oh-Ming couldn't help pressed his head and said again. He turned his head to look at the TV remote control. "I can't bear to bully my wife." As he walked, he said, "Boy, yesterday you wanted to die as soon as you came, and today you want to watch TV. Apologize so fickle. Why are you apologizing to me? Ming Lily," he said. Su-Chen's took a tissue to wipe Lily's tears, but she couldn't help smiling. Lily took the tissue and bowed her head in silence. Chapter How blissful. 41. Li-Siqing Lily didn't receive it. This was the remote control, unconditional tolerance. This made Lily even more angry, and Oh-Ming was just playing angrily. He said he hung up the medicine bag again, but he was just returned to the sofa to sit down. The difference was Lily turned on the TV and found a variety show to watch. This was an old show that had been around for more than 10 years. Oh-Ming squinted at Lily, invited but did not apologize and play games Lily together. Also did not speak. And the ratings had always after been the dishes were served. Lily watched for a while, and Oh-Ming couldn't find anything funny. After the group of people had dinner, she was even more upset. Li-Siqing glanced at Oh-Ming, found another the sound of his typing on the keyboard. While Su-Chen, it could be seen that he was very busy with work. Seeing why is he still dazzling lineup is it really just to humiliate me? Lily stood in the mirror store from committing suicide as if she had returned to the past for so long. Su-Chen picked up the clothes one by so much time for compared them with Lily's body. Is it possible that he still likes me? This looks good. Thinking of this possibility, hey, Lily's heart suddenly accelerated. Lily was in front of the mirror. She felt bitter and her eyes were shining. It can't be. But if he really still liked her, why would he insult her was a little hot? In the past, he couldn't wait to hold me in the palm of his hand and give me all the best. Lily held the pile of clothes, she was dismissive at and that felt time. Her cheeks were. She saw how good Oh-Ming was. Su-Chen gently pushed her and said, "Go." When she finally found out that she had fallen in love with Oh-Ming, Lily looked around all the good and found that the salesperson was still in order to punish her severely. She carefully the laughter from the variety show was constantly coming from the TV. But I don't have money. This store is so expensive, but there was no focus. Su-Chen heard that. Oh-Ming glanced at her. She looked at her with some surprise over and asked, Lily didn't notice that he had come to her side. Lily was a little embarrassed. The sudden dark shadow she shook her head and slightly looked down. She found that Oh-Ming had reached out. He tried on first. Lily shrank. I will buy it for you. Subconsciously Su-Chen looked at the clothes. What do you want to do? In Lily's arms. Oh-Ming's eyes darkened. They're all so and he reached out to press the call bell. It suits your temperament. Not far from Lily's bed. It doesn't matter. After pressing the bell. Try it on first. Oh-Ming turned around and returned to the sofa pushed her to the fitting room. Lily tried on a sigh of relief. Lily hesitated fusion bottle above her head. Finally, she found that there was only a bottom put on a black liquid above. She looked at the
even
size.
she didn't notice it.
It was the
The
smallest.
nurse quickly came
but
to
it
help her
directly
remove
fell
the
on her
needle
body,
and then
it was
went
too
out.
big.
The whole ward
Lily
was
put it on and
indescribably
found that she had
quiet.
lost so much
Only
weight.
the sound of the
She
variety
looked like
show
a
on the
refugee.
TV could be
No
heard.
wonder
The
Sue
laughter on the
Chansey looked at
TV
her
was
with a
endless,
strange expression.
but the atmosphere in
Lily,
reality
show me when
was
you were done.
somewhat dull.
Sue Chansey
Oming
shouted
closed the
outside
computer and
she
glanced
quickly
at
opened
her.
the door and
He
walked
walked
out.
to the water dispenser
Sue Chansey
and
saw
poured
it
a glass of
and
water.
had an exaggerated
Then he went to a
expression
cart
on her
under the
face.
TV and
She said,
fiddled with it.
"Beautiful."
It
Soon,
was so
he
fake.
walked to Lily.
When Lily
He
saw
handed
his
her a
expression,
glass of water.
she couldn't help
and a
but
packet of
laugh.
medicine.
Looking at her
Lily looked
baggy
at the
dress in the
medicine,
mirror,
pursed her
Sue
lips,
Chansey's
took
funny
the water,
expression,
and
stared
stared
at
at
the
the
pulled the
medicine.
hem of her dress.
Just looking
and
at it
asked,
made her mouth
"Really?"
bitter.
The waiter
Oming
quickly
opened the
came
bag
forward
and
and
poured
said,
all the
"Yes,
pills in
you
her
look good
hand.
in it."
He
But
didn't
your
say a
figure
word the
is a
whole
little
time.
slim. I'll get you an excess.
Lily looked at the medicine
Yes,
and drank a glass
Bring
of
it
water.
over and let
Finally,
Lily try it.
She smacked
The
her
shop
lips
assistant
and
quickly
quickly
brought a smaller one
Oming
over.
poured her another
Under
glass
Sue
of water,
Chansey's
but
encouraging
he wasn't in a
gaze,
hurry to give it to
Lily
her.
went in
Instead,
and changed it.
He put in the
Just
cart
right.
and walked
The fit
out.
was unexpected.
When he came back,
This time,
he was holding
Sue
something in
Chansey
his
no
hand.
longer had
After
an
bringing the water
exaggerated
over,
expression.
he opened
She
his
was
palm.
truly amazed and praised. Beautiful. When Lily saw
Chapter
her like this,
842.
she also
Lily
laughed. Reached out to grab the candy. But
Then she
Oming
changed
took
several
it back.
sets of clothes
Lily
in a
was
row,
annoyed,
keeping
and
the
looked up at him.
good-looking ones
Oming
and
did not
sifting out
speak,
the ugly ones,
but handed the
in
water
the same
to her
store
and
she
glanced
bought
at the
3
medicine
sets
in
of
her hand.
clothes.
His meaning was self-evident. Seeing this, Lily reluctantly took the water and swallowed
However,
the medicine.
Sue Chansey
But she saw
did
that
not even
Oming
blink
had already
and swiped the
removed the
card.
wrapper of
After
the milk
Lily
candy.
went out,
Shocked,
she
Lily
whispered,
reached out
"Chan
and
Chan,
grabbed the candy.
I will return the money
Removed
to
the
you
remaining
later.
wrapper.
Don't mention
and
it."
put it in her mouth.
When we were in school,
Oming
you helped me a lot.
unconsciously
But
softened
just buying
his
a few
eyes.
clothes.
After throwing
You
away
don't
the
have to
cup,
be so
he
polite
picked up the
with
suit
me.
next to him
While talking,
and went out.
Sue Chansey
Soon
had
a nurse
taken
came
Lily
in
into a
and looked at
store
Lily
used to
Oming
wear.
should have left.
It was very
famous and
he sent someone to
expensive.
monitor me.
As soon as
Pursing
Lily
her
went
lips,
in,
she
Lily
was
turned
attracted
on the
by the
TV
red coat
to
in
watch
the
out of
middle.
boredom.
So beautiful.
But she didn't like
However,
any of the channels.
as the main item
Looking
of the
around,
store,
the price
Lily
must
finally
be very
looked
good.
at
Sue
Oming's
Chansey
notebook.
immediately
Asking the
noticed
nurse
that
to bring it
Lily
to
was
her.
looking at the coat.
Lily
and
put
said
down
to
the
the
small
salesperson,
dining table
"That coat
and turned on
the
the
smallest
computer.
one.
However,
Tried on. She found
okay,
that there was a password.
please wait a moment.
Oming's
The
computer
salesperson was
password.
not blind.
It shouldn't be the same
clothes
password
that Sue
as before.
Chansey was
Lily
wearing looked
frowned
simple
and entered his
but each
mobile
of them
phone
was
number.
very expensive.
Error.
And
She
that
entered
coat
it again. Was a
it was his
limited
birthday.
edition of a
Error.
luxury brand.
Oming wrong.
Very expensive.
Oming did not like
Hearing
to change
this,
passwords.
She immediately
and
took
these
out
had
the
some special
smallest
meaning
one.
for him.
Lily
However,
had no money
there were a
and
few
no
possible
confidence.
passwords that were
Seeing Sue
displayed
Chansey
incorrectly.
waving her hand,
Could it be that
she felt sad?
he had changed his
When the
password?
salesperson brought
In
the
the past
coat
few
over,
years,
Sue Chansey
had he remembered
turned around
other numbers
and pulled
very
her to the
clearly?
mirror.
Lily
She took off
thought
her
about
coat
it
and said,
and
"Try it
entered
on."
the password
When Sue
she had
Chansey's
used
voice
before.
fell, the
The
computer was turned
salesperson
on
had
with a
already
light
put it
sound.
on Lily's
Lily's
very
heart
sensibly.
was beating
After putting it
wildly.
on,
Looking at the
Lily's
open
whole
page,
aura was
she
different.
sat blankly.
The red
In
color,
the past,
combined
the
with
password
Lily's
he
white
often
skin that
used
was
recently
different from
was her
ordinary
birthday.
people.
He
looked
actually still
extraordinarily
used his
beautiful.
password. Although
Why?
Lily
The
now
palpitation
looked pitifully
that should
thin,
not have been
and the
ignited
overall
quickly
face looked a
in her
little
heart.
thin.
And
Lily's
sick
mind became
because of this
more
coat
and more
She was
chaotic.
full of the aura
Looking
of
at the
a queen.
screen full of
It's
information
so
and
beautiful.
documents, the
And
salesperson
the email
said,
page that had
"You're the
not been
first
closed
customer to
yet.
wear this dress."
However,
so
she
well,
inadvertently glanced
as if it was
at an
tailor-made
email
for you.
title.
It's so
Capital
beautiful.
Ren Technology
While talking,
Company,
the
limited
salesperson had
acquisition
turned
plan.
around and
Capital
brought a pair
Ren.
of red shoes.
Isn't
on the
this
side of
Lita's
the window.
company?
The
How could it
heels
be?
were very high.
How could Oming acquire
a full 10
such a small
centimeters?
company?
However,
Even Lily
this
looked
height
down on
was what
such a
Lily
company,
used to wear most
let
often.
alone Oming.
You could try this pair of shoes.
If it weren't for his high
the
salary,
combination,
you
must
Lily
be
wouldn't
very
have stayed
beautiful.
there.
You are
Now,
so suitable
Oming
for
was
red.
buying this kind of
As the
lousy
salesperson
company?
spoke,
Why?
she
Could it
squatted
really be
down
that
to
he
help
had
Lily
too
take
much
off her
money
shoes
and was
put
buying
them
it
on
for
for
fun?
her? Lily clicked on
looked
it and found that the
enviously and
document
said,
had already been
"So
downloaded
beautiful."
by Oming.
Sue Chansey
When she
actually
opened it,
liked red
the estimated
clothes,
price and
but she could
operating
not
costs
stand
were
the
far
aura.
lower than
Most
what
of her
Lily
clothes
knew.
were bought
and it was
by
much
Letitia.
lower. They were
Although
either
Lita's
light
company
yellow
wasn't
or light
big,
green. It
or
shouldn't be
white,
so cheap,
pink, and
right?
blue. Moreover,
although they looked good on
Lida's
her,
importance
they didn't
to
have
this company's
strong
couldn't be
aura.
underestimated.
Su Qianxi
He
felt
wouldn't
sorry
easily
and
agree to
waved her
sell it.
hand.
Could it be
I'll take
that
the shoes and
he had
coat.
gone bankrupt?
Qian, okay.
The
The
shop
Lily's heart
assistant was
beating
overjoyed.
very fast.
A pair of shoes and a
the more
coat
she read,
added up to
the more
hundreds of
shocked
thousands.
she was.
Lily's
Suddenly
heart was bleeding.
Out of the corner of her
He
eye,
silently
she
counted
saw
with his fingers
Ming's
how
figure.
many years he would have to
Shocked,
work.
she
to
quickly
pay back
closed the
money.
document
At the
and
same
pressed the
time,
sleep button.
he was also
While he was walking
extremely
over,
satisfied.
she
with
turned
his
on the
current
computer
clothes,
again and
his
pretended to
heart
enter
was
the password.
jumping with joy.
It had been a
Chapter
long time since she had
843.
worn good clothes.
Lily pretended to be calm.
Lily could tell the
Pressed the
difference
enter key
just
a
by
few
feeling the
times
texture
and said,
"What is your password? I can't open it."
Ming squinted at her for a moment.
52.
Then went
After
forward
shopping,
and closed
Su
the
Qianxi
computer.
did not buy any
He took
clothes,
the computer,
but she bought
and
a
sat
lot
on the
of
edge of the sofa
cosmetics
in duplicate,
not answering
The
her
two of them
question.
found a place to
The
sit
nurse
down
saw
in the mall
Ming
and
coming
ordered.
over,
Said
You
hello
Lily
at the
sat
same
in a
time,
chair,
and
looking
went out.
very tired.
At this moment,
Su Qianxi
Ming had
poured her a
changed his
glass
clothes.
of lemonade.
He should have
and
found a
said,
place to take a
Lily,
shower and change
why did you abort
clothes?
the child?
And he looked much
Did you tell
cleaner
Ming?
and more refreshed.
The topic returned to the
Lily
original
pretended
point,
to be
but
disdainful.
Lily's mood was
lay down
obviously much calmer.
and pulled the quilt
Hearing
up
that,
to cover half
she
of her
smiled
face.
slightly,
But she did
and
not
shook
turn her
head
back
gently,
like before,
saying,
but
in
quietly
order to leave
tucked
him,
the quilt,
I lied to
peeking
him
out a
that
pair
he
of
killed the
eyes.
child.
Ming
Su
seemed to
Qianxi
notice
heard
her
that
gaze
and stared
and looked
incredulously.
Lily
noticed
saw
this
and
quickly
laughed at
closed her
herself.
eyes.
It's incredible,
pretending to sleep.
isn't it?
It's
Ming
too
felt something
cruel.
was wrong.
Before we talk
and
about
entered the
this,
password
I want to ask you
to
one
open
thing.
the computer.
What? The page on
Ming,
the
are you
computer
engaged?
seemed to be different
Hearing
from
this
when he
question,
just left. Su
it was
Qianxi
open.
frowned and said,
Password?
I don't know.
He looked at you,
I
Lily,
have heard of it
who was
before,
pretending to
but I have
sleep on
never
the bed.
seen it. What did you
I don't
see?
think so.
Ming
If
slid
there
his finger
is,
on the touchpad.
it should be introduced to my
and asked
husband.
slowly.
If my husband
Lily
knows,
felt a little
I will
guilty,
definitely know
but
too,
still
so
pretended to be
I don't
calm.
think so.
She opened her
Really?
eyes
From
and
another
looked at him
perspective,
with a puzzled look.
Even if there
What?
is,
Even
even
if
if there
slightly
is,
raised his
even his
eyebrows
brother
and chuckled,
does not know
but his face
of
was
the
cold.
existence of this
Don't touch my
fiancé.
things in the
How
future.
little sense of existence
His voice was
does
gloomy
this
with
fiancé
displeasure.
have?
Ming's
Su
sullen
Qianxi
face
shrugged,
made you
and
Lily
said with a
feel
smile.
even more guilty.
After Su Qianxi
She
said
sneered,
so,
who wants it?
you Lily
Although
felt
she
that
said
it was somewhat
so,
reasonable.
she couldn't
After a
help
moment
but
of silence,
feel
she
jealous.
said,
At
she
that
turned
time,
around with the quilt.
The doctor told
and
me that the
closed her
child
eyes.
was likely to be
You Lily,
deformed, and
you really
advised
think
me
too
not to
highly
keep
of
it.
yourself.
Know why?
When
My
my
relationship with
Ming,
he saw a few WeChat messages
I have
on
been
his phone.
afraid.
It was
so
Ming.
I've been taking contraceptives
After calling several
but
times,
I still
no
got
one
pregnant.
answered. He
Such a
simply threw
child
the
cannot
phone
be
aside
kept.
and turned
So,
around to hug his
then
wife.
why didn't you tell Ming?
Su Qianxi was still
Su
in a
Qianxi
daze,
looked at her
being hugged like
incredulously.
this.
She
Does Ming not want
habitually
this child?
burrowed into his arms.
I didn't tell him.
And then
You
fell
Lily
asleep
twitched her
again.
mouth. Li
and
Siqing
smiled
held her in his
gently.
arms. If I
And
told him, I
unconsciously
wouldn't be able
hugged
to
her,
leave, would
his
I?
big hand
How did
stroking
you?
her waist.
How could
Well,
you be so
she was
pretentious,
fat again.
right?
So
Lily
fat.
laughed at herself.
She moaned
and
I
took
also
his hand
think
away.
I am
He
pretentious,
lowered his head and
but I
whispered,
really want to live
"Get
on
up,
my own.
Mrs. Lee. Qian,
Shut
I
up.
envy you so much."
She reached out
Do you know
and
that?
covered his mouth.
Envy me. She was
refusing
dazed.
to open her eyes.
Well, he turned
I envy
over
your good luck
and pinched her nose.
Envy that you have a
saying,
husband who loves you.
"You're getting lazy.
Envy your talent.
Well,
your
go
ability.
away.
Your
I wanna
conduct.
sleep."
Your popularity.
She frowned
your
and
character.
waved him off.
Your
He
mentality.
chuckled and
A
stopped
lot.
teasing
I
her.
envy them all.
After
You
washing
Lily
up,
looked
he
at
went
her with
outside.
tears in her eyes.
He took the kids out
and
for a
whispered,
run. But
"If
just
I
after
were
running
you,
one lap,
it would be
he received
great."
a call. You
It
Lily
was
looked
Ming.
at her with tears
When
in
Li
her
Jianhua
eyes
saw that her
and
father had
whispered,
gone to answer the
"If
phone,
only I were you."
she immediately
Su
took the
Qianxi
lead
listened to
to
her
slack
words
off.
and looked
She
at her
called
strangely.
Brother Mosin
Lily,
to
are
catch
you
worms
serious?
together.
After
Oh my
hanging
God.
up,
Su
he looked at
Qianxi
the kids
felt that
running
the world
around
was going
and was about to
crazy.
put his phone back
Lily,
when it rang
do you know how much I envy
This time
you?
it was Chung.
I'm very timid.
It had been a while
You
since
know,
Chung Yu
and I'm not
returned to the
eloquent
company
and
to work.
cowardly.
When I was bullied in the
Perhaps
past,
because of
it was
Rome
always
Rue,
you and Ihan.
her
who
working
helped me
ability
bully
was
them.
not inferior
I remember
to
it all.
before.
You Lily
but more
thought she was
efficient
comforting
than
her.
before.
So she
As
drank a
soon as he
glass
picked
of
up,
water. He heard a
and didn't
piece of
speak.
explosive news. "Boss, we found Bo Xiao." Bo Xiao. Chapter 853. Su Qianxi
Chapter
looked at her
844.
and was not
In the
joking
colorful
at all.
Yunnan,
You know what I was
the
like in high
sun
school,
was
right?
shining brightly.
In the past,
In the
you
shabby
liked to dye
alley,
your hair.
there were tan
If you dyed it
children
red,
running
I
around,
dyed it red.
laughing.
If you dyed it
and
yellow,
playing,
I
and the
dyed it
sound of
yellow.
children crying.
There was
could be
one
heard.
time when you dyed it
Today's
green,
weather was very
and
good.
I also dyed it
and the
green.
sun was very
Do you
bright.
still remember?
An old man
You Lily
dressed
thought of
in
the past,
beautiful
chuckled,
and neat ethnic
nodded, and
clothes.
said, "At
moved
that
a
time,
small
I just
stool
dyed it with
and
a
sat
hair
in
dye
front of the
stick.
door.
When the school
Watching the
checked,
children
I
playing,
washed it all
and
off.
from time to time,
Who knew that you
said a
still had
few
colorful
words that
hair?
could not be
In
understood.
the end, I was
Rong
caught by
Anna
the
was
class
drying
supervisor
clothes on the roof
and was ordered to
humming
dye
a
it all
tune.
back.
After
You Lily
drying
thought
all
of the
the
past,
clothes,
chuckled.
she stood on the
nodded,
railing on the
and
edge
said,
of the roof.
At that time,
looked at the golden
I only
sun
used a hair dye
hanging
stick.
in the distance.
Speaking of the
and
past,
stretched.
you
With
Lily
one
laughed.
hand on her
How can you be
slightly
so
bulging
stupid?
belly.
How can a normal
Rong Anna's
person dye
body
their
was
hair
warmed by the sun
permanently and at the
and
same
changed
time
their color
her
and face was
day.
also full of the glory of maternal
Su
love.
Chincy puffed up
In
her
the
cheeks,
distance,
and
there were
said with some
domestic
annoyance,
dogs barking.
"You're still
and
talking
the sound
about
of
it?
electric car
You made me
horns
so
came up.
miserable
The
at that
mood was
time.
quiet.
I really wanted to
peaceful.
dye my hair.
It was good.
After I
If
dyed
she
it
could
black,
live like this forever,
all my hair was
it would be a
ruined.
good choice.
It fell off in
In a
bunches
beautiful
and
small
growth.
city.
It was
doing
so
a small
ugly.
business.
Uh-huh.
With a husband
However,
and children by
I
her
really
side,
like you,
working
and I
at
envy you.
sunrise
Because
and
many
resting
people
at
like you.
sunset.
I learned from
However,
you
the
were
cruel
arrogant,
reality
but you
had
were
turned
popular.
this simple
I learned from
idea into
but
an
I was
extravagant
hated by
hope.
many.
Wrong
I
Anna
can't bear
looked
to look
down
back on the
and
past.
inadvertently saw
At that time,
a few men
some
in
people
simple
secretly
casual
laughed at
clothes,
Su Chincy
looking at
behind
each
her
other
back
and
saying that she
carefully
was
hiding
imitating
at the
the
others.
others.
Some of them were
so
smoking,
stupid,
but their
you
postures
Lily's
were
smile
tall and
became
straight.
bigger and
They
bigger.
were all very
and her
healthy and
eyes
strong.
curved.
One of
Su
them
Chincy
was holding a
also
mobile
laughed,
phone and
"You are
making
so
a phone call.
beautiful
and so
just on the other side of the box,
why do you
there was
envy
another
me?
line of
I envy you
people
very
standing.
much, Lily.
Rong-Anna
Not only
immediately
me, but
had
many
an
people
ominous
also like
premonition.
you and envy
After
you,
looking around,
such as Lou
she
Ainen
finally saw a
and
car
Lin
that looked like a
They
police
used to be
car
against
about
you,
2 alleys away.
but every time they
But
were
she could only
defeated by
see a
you.
little bit.
Many
And
people
it
in
was
the class
difficult to
applauded
see
you,
the whole picture,
saying that you were doing justice
Shocked.
for the world.
Rong-Anna
I could not do
carried the
such
basket
things.
to dry clothes.
You, Lily,
and
why do you
ran
envy
down
me?
from the top floor.
Looking at Su
Back to the
Qianxi's
small house
expression,
she rented,
you, Lily, was a bit
Rong-Anna
dazed.
pushed the door.
Was that
and
so?
went in.
It turned
Bo
out
Xiao
that
was
while
on
she
the
was
phone in the room,
envious of
and his face
Qianxian,
didn't seem to be very
Qianxian was
good.
also
Rong-Anna
envious of
went
her.
in and
The
saw his
gloomy
expression,
mood in his heart
but she didn't speak
immediately
immediately.
relaxed.
Bo
And he
Xiao's
was suddenly
mood seemed to be
enlightened.
rotten.
You, Lily,
and he
looked
shouted
at
at
the
the
beautiful
phone.
woman in front
Old
of her,
Sue,
smiled
you are so
sincerely,
boring, at least.
and said gratefully,
The
"Thank
phone
you,
was hung up,
Qianxian."
and Bo
Hearing
Xiao
this,
was
Su
furious
Qianxi
and
also
scolded
looked at
and
her
damn
and
it.
chuckled.
Xiao, what
Let's eat.
happened?
After
Old
dinner,
Sue's group
Su
of
Qianxi
grandsons
took
Didn't
you,
they
Lily,
say
back
they were
to
going
the
to pick up
hotel.
our goods last
Su
time?
Qianxi
They haven't
and Li
moved for so
Xiqing
long.
booked a suite
I was called to
on the
ask,
top floor,
and he said he
his
doesn't want a
5-star
goods
hotel.
anymore. There were
SH
only 2
asterisk
suites
T.
on the top floor.
When
one
Rong-Anna
on the
heard
south
this,
and one
her
on the
face
north.
changed.
Su
Old
Qianxi
Sue's goods
and you,
couldn't
Lily,
be
were
moved out
carrying a
last
lot
time,
of things,
so we took
but
over.
you, Lily, was so
How can he-
tired that
Now that you
2/3 of them
see
were
that
in
we
Su
can't do it,
Qianxi's hands.
you don't want to work with us
She swiped the
anymore.
card when we
and
make
went
a
to the top
comeback.
floor.
We will definitely take
Qianxi
revenge.
took you, Lily, to
Bo
the
Xiao
suite
placed
on
his
the
hands
south
on the
side.
table and
Just when you,
scratched
Lily,
his
thought
head
she
in
would take the
frustration.
card.
Su
No,
Qianxi
we can't just
directly
sit here and do
rang the
nothing.
doorbell. After 2 rings, light footsteps could be heard from inside. Lily had a bad feeling in her heart, so she took a step back. The door was opened, and Ming's figure suddenly appeared. Ming looked a little tired. His light blue collar was loose, and he stood tall by the door, looking indescribably lazy. However, such an image had a fatal attraction for women. His almond-shaped eyes moved and fell on Lily. Chapter 854. Before Su Qianxi could say anything, Ming said, "Where do you want second brother to sleep?" Lily heard that and looked at Ming. Then she grabbed Su Qianxi's sleeve for help and said, "Qianxian." If she stayed in the same room with Ming, she couldn't imagine what kind of humiliation Ming would give her. She couldn't stand it. She really couldn't stand it. If it happened a few more times, Lily was afraid that she couldn't help but die again. Instead of being unable to lift her head and stand up in front of him, it was really better to die. Seeing this, Su Qianxi was a little embarrassed and looked at Ming. She saw Ming's eyes slightly narrowed, and an unspeakable sense of danger filled the air. Su Qianxi was even more embarrassed. She pulled Lily's hand and said, "Lily, you'd better stay in the same room with Ming. I'm afraid that Li Xiqing will not agree." More importantly, she was afraid that Ming would not agree. Moreover, if she wanted to make them reconcile, she could only let them stay in the same room. This was undoubtedly the fastest way to achieve the desired effect. Just like she and Li Xiqing, they quarreled at the head of the bed, but they made up at the end. Su Qianxi gently pulled her hand away, then gently pushed Lily and said, "Go in." At the same time, Ming had already taken her hand and said, "They are living together. What's the matter with you?" Lily's heart stopped, and she immediately breathed quickly. She frowned and said angrily, "You know what I mean." Ming glanced at her coldly. His thin red lips curled up into an indescribable evil. He asked, "Then what do you mean?" Lily was even more annoyed and sneered. "Don't you know what I mean?" Seeing these 2 people quarreling again, Su Qianxi coughed and said, "Ming, didn't you promise me? I know." Ming interrupted her and pulled Lily in. He quickly drove Su Qianxi away and said, "Li Xiqing is waiting for you. Go quickly. Then I'll go first. You have a good talk." Su Qianxi put down the things and handed them to Ming. "Here, Lily's things." Ming only glanced at it before turning to look at Lily with a faint smile. Being stared at by him, Lily's face immediately became hot. It was as if he had seen through her. It was as if he had seen through her. She turned to look at Su Qianxi and shouted, "Qianxian, Qianxian, how about you lend me a few hundred yuan? I'll take a taxi back. I have rented a house in the capital. I will go back now. I just remembered that I still have a lot of things to solve at home." Su Qianxi's eyes were hot. Ming slightly tightened his grip on her wrist. He sneered with some displeasure and said, "The shabby house that you used to commit suicide?" Lily paused and turned to look at Ming.
She saw Ming's pair of peach blossom eyes with an unknown smile, looked at her, and said, "The landlord has already driven you out. The deposit and advance payment that you originally paid have all been returned to me. They have been taken by me." Lily was annoyed and blurted out, "What right do you have?" Chapter 855. Su Qianxi was locked outside and suddenly felt a little flustered. Did she do something wrong? It seemed that the relationship between Ming and Lily was not as simple as she had imagined. Ming wouldn't hit someone, right? Su Qianxi felt a little distressed. She leaned against the door and listened, but heard nothing. After a long while, she stood up and carried her things to the suite in the north. She took out the room card, and with a beep, the door opened. Su Qianxi threw all the things she had bought on the sofa in the suite and sat on the side. Her legs were a little sore. Just then, Li Xiqing had just taken a shower. He opened the bathroom door and came out with only a bath towel on him. Seeing her coming back, he dried his hair and asked, "Where did you go?" "Shopping, buying clothes, eating." Su Qianxi sat on the sofa, a little sad, and said, "Honey, I'm thinking if I did something wrong. I'll let Lily stay in the same room with Ming, but it seems that she really doesn't want to be with Ming. Will Ming hit her? What should I do?" Li Xiqing heard that and couldn't help laughing. He came up and gently pinched her cheek, saying, "How is that possible? Ming has been educated as a Western gentleman since he was a child. He never hits women. Will he scold women?" Su Qianxi looked at him, feeling a little nervous. Li Xiqing heard that and was silent for a moment. It was hard to say. Ming's mouth was so dirty, but seeing his wife's worried look, he still said, "No." Hearing that, Su Qianxi breathed a sigh of relief and nodded. "That's good. Let Ming reform her. But it seems that Ming really doesn't like Lily anymore. Are you sure this will work?" "I don't know. Lily is a woman with a big heart. She wants a lot of things." Li Xiqing threw the towel aside and said, "Ming actually likes her very much. Don't think too much." "What big heart? Lily is a very easy person to be satisfied." Su Qianxi was a little unhappy. Li Xiqing heard that and smiled without saying anything. Seeing his expression, Su Qianxi felt a bit depressed. What's with that expression? If she was so easily satisfied, she wouldn't have left in the first place. This woman is far more complicated than you think. "Of course not. I know her very well. You don't understand, Mrs. Li. She is not as innocent as you think." He pulled her up. "I don't think she deserves Ming." Hearing this, Su Qianxi was even more annoyed. She shook off his hand and said, "It's obvious that Ming doesn't deserve Lily. Lily is such a good girl, but Ming doesn't know how to cherish her. Do you know how many people like Lily back then? You don't even know Lily. How can you say that?" Li Xiqing felt a little helpless and said, "Let's not dwell on this issue. Go take a shower." She glared at him, stomped her foot, and waved her hand. "Don't go to my bed tonight." Li Xiqing looked innocent and did not know whether to laugh or cry. Did I do something wrong? She had already turned around and walked directly into the bathroom, ignoring him. Lily resisted and tried to take her hand back, but Ming held it tightly. Chapter 856. He forcibly dragged Lily into the room, then locked the door and pushed her in. "Ming, what do you want?" Lily was extremely angry. "What's the matter with the house? Don't you understand? You almost committed suicide in that place. The landlord was very angry and drove you out." Ming slowly reached out and unbuttoned his shirt. His movements were slow and elegant. Lily was even more annoyed and said angrily, "It must be your trick, right? The landlord likes me very much. How could he drive me out?" "Huh." Ming glanced at her from the corner of his eye. There was contempt in his sneer. "You're too naive, little you. You almost killed someone there. If word of this gets out, how are you going to rent out the house? Do you really think that everyone can like you forever? Do you really think that everyone can like you forever?" That last sentence made Lily's heart skip a beat. Looking at him, Lily turned around and was about to open the door. Ming looked at her and said in a lazy tone with a faint smile, "What do you want to do?" Lily ignored him and trotted toward the door. Ming said in a cold tone, Your good friend asked me to talk to you. Do you want to let her down? Lily stopped opening the door and looked back at him. After a long time, she asked, What do you want to talk about? I don't know. Ming shrugged and walked over slowly. His leather shoes landed on the thick carpet without making a sound. But don't you have a lot of things to say to me? He asked. As he spoke, his footsteps had come over, and the distance between them had been quietly shortened. For example, what you just wanted to say to Su Qianxi, but when you saw me coming over, you took it back. The footsteps had reached the door, and the distance between them was only 2 steps. Ming stopped, put his big hands in the straight and neat trousers pocket, and slanted his lips. The curve was not big, but it was evil and charming. Lily's heart skipped a beat, and she looked at him incredulously. Really? Will he really believe that there is another reason? Will he really believe that? I didn't mean it. This result was far beyond Lily's expectation. Lily's eyes were wet, and she almost cried out. Excitement and elation instantly condensed in his chest and overflowed with words. Looking at him, Lily was about to speak, but the next second, Ming said, I am very interested to know what kind of lie you almost made up today. The words on the tip of Lily's tongue were crushed and swallowed back. Just like the 2 children back then, they died in the womb. The excitement and joy he felt just now had turned into a joke at this moment. Huh? Lily looked away and didn't want to say anything more. She turned around and unlocked the door. Ming's eyes darkened. He reached out and grabbed her arm. Then he turned her around and pressed her against the door. The wooden door immediately made a dull sound. Lily stared at him, gasping for breath. Chapter 857. Lily felt a burst of anger and sneered. When it comes to lying, who can be better than you? Mr. Ming, I can't compare to your ability to make lies. Is that so? Ming pressed harder against her, and the smile on his face widened. So, you can tell which of my words is true and which is false. However, even though he had a smile on his face, his eyes were ice cold. It seemed that the next moment, he could crush her on the spot. Lily fearlessly looked at him, with a sneer on her lips, and slowly said, Of course, don't underestimate the degree of my understanding of you. This time, even Ming's eyes narrowed. He looked at her deeply, like a rippling lake with layers of white moonlight, so deep, so thick. Then let's do a test. How about it? Ming pressed against her, chuckling and touching the tip of her nose. Their breaths were intertwined, and it was impossible to distinguish each other. Lily stared into his eyes, and the moment her sight fell into his deep eyes, it seemed that the whole soul of the person was attracted to him. She had no power to fight back. What? Lily even stuttered. Ming looked at her, just chuckling, but it was indescribably evil. Lily. Ming raised his other hand, pinched her chin, squinted his eyes, and said in a low voice, I still love you. I still love you. These words made Lily's pupils shrink, and her heart beat uncontrollably. It was so fast, as if a small motor was installed, and even her body was shaking with it. Ming's hand was placed across her chest, and he could clearly sense the subtle changes in her. His eyes slightly narrowed. Ming slightly leaned his face forward and kissed her lips. Lily's heart beat faster, and she couldn't believe it. Looking at the face in front of her that was getting bigger and bigger, she was stunned for a moment and didn't know what to do. Ming closed his eyes and forced his way in. He skillfully pried open her pearly white teeth and quietly penetrated her. His movements were gentle, but Lily's heart almost jumped out of her chest. She flew to the past, to the time when he still loved her. I still love you. Is that true? Unknowingly, a layer of water vapor had condensed in her eyes. When she blinked, the water droplets hidden in it suddenly fell down. His breathing became shorter and shorter. With a throbbing heart, she lowered her eyes to look at him. Ming tasted the salty tears. He opened his eyes and looked into her confused eyes. Ming. Lily looked at him. The smile on Ming's face widened, and he whispered in her ear, Didn't you say that you understand me? So are my words true or false? In Lily's heart, there was a voice screaming crazily, Really, really, really. However, rationality pulled her back to reality. How could that be? Didn't Oming hate her so much? However, the pair of eyes in front of her were smiling and gentle. So real. The voice in her heart was about to come out, but it was like a fishbone stuck in her throat. If she said something wrong, would he say that she was overthinking, and then she would be more humiliated? Lily looked at him and whispered, "Liar." Chapter 858. Oming lowered his eyes and chuckled. With appreciation in his eyes, he said, "Smart girl." Lily's eyelashes fluttered. She looked up at him with a smile and asked in a low voice, "Is it interesting?" "Oming, you don't want to let me go. Isn't it because you want to retaliate against me? Why don't you let me die of anger?" Oming heard the words, gently lowered his forehead, and put it on her forehead. He said slowly, "Why should I let you go so easily?" His voice was gentle and pleasant, but it was with great sin. Lily could clearly feel the resentment in it. "So cruel, you know." Oming's big hand gently moved down and whispered, "Your body is very attractive." His big hand wrapped around her waist and pulled her into his arms. Then he lifted her up. Lily was shocked. She struggled out of habit, but soon stopped moving and closed her eyes in resignation. With a low exclamation, Lily was already lying on the bed. Oming habitually put his knee on her lower abdomen, but soon he thought of the matter of that year. Because of this action, which had become a habit, the two children turned into a puddle of blood. Oming's heart was slightly tingling, and he quickly moved his knee away and fell between her legs. A pair of beautiful peach blossom eyes looked at her and said with a faint smile, "These things you bought are not cheap. Even if Su Qianxi gave them to you, you wouldn't accept them, would you?" Lily listened and stared at him. Her red lips were slightly raised with sarcasm. "Look how well he knows me. So what? To save you." Oming's long fingers gently lifted her chin. "It doesn't matter who you sell it to. Sell it to me in the future." Then he lowered his head and kissed her lips hard. "The price I give is higher than anyone else." He had sacrificed his entire heart for this. Maybe it would be impossible to get it back in this life. Who would give a higher price than him? "Ha ha." Lily sneered and looked up at him. Oming's eyes deepened, and he smiled evilly. He bent over and buried his face in her neck. Hot and passionate kisses fell on her body. Lily's eyes trembled slightly. She felt the impulse of the man in front of her, and her heart was full of sadness. Gently closing her eyes, Lily passively endured his roughness. The passionate kiss went deeper and deeper, teasing each other's senses. It had been a long time since he had touched her like this. For Oming, it was undoubtedly a familiar stimulation. His body had already reacted. He panted and peeled off her clothes layer by layer. Unexpectedly, when he removed the last layer of her clothes, he suddenly realized that there was an even breathing sound coming from above his head. Oming paused and looked up. Lily's eyes were closed. From Oming's angle, he could clearly see her long eyelashes. Lily's breathing was steady, and her chest rose and fell. Just looking at it, it was a very fascinating picture. However, it made Oming laugh angrily. This woman actually fell asleep? How big a heart did she have? He pinched her chest twice as a punishment, but Lily just waved her hand and frowned. Then, she tilted her head and continued to sleep. Chapter 859. After a low curse, Lily still did not respond at all. Oming was speechless. In the end, he turned and went into the bathroom. The bathroom door was gently closed, and Oming also turned off the lights in the room. In a place where Oming couldn't see, Lily opened her eyes and looked at the darkness above her head. Tears quietly fell from the corner of her eyes. However, her heartbeat was fast. That sentence was true. Just as he knew her, she knew him. After Oming took a shower and dried his hair, it was very late. He tiptoed back to the bedroom and unconsciously climbed onto the bed. There wasn't much self-consciousness involved in all of this, and everything was done naturally and smoothly. But after going to bed, he suddenly woke up. Damn, why am I so careful? For some reason, Ming was depressed. After lying down, he pulled out the quilt that was under Lily's body. Lily moaned and turned over. Her even breathing could be heard. Ming held his forehead and covered her with the quilt. Then he lay down and closed his eyes. However, his mind was full of thoughts, and Ming couldn't calm down at all. Turning around, he reached out and gently hooked the little woman who had fallen asleep. Ming's heart finally calmed down a little. But what he didn't expect was that Lily took the opportunity to lean in his direction. Ming's body was stiff. At the same time as he was stunned, Lily had leaned over and gently rubbed against him to adjust a comfortable position. Then there was a steady breathing sound. This was the habitual movement she used to have. She was like a kitten with sharp teeth and claws, snuggling comfortably in a warm nest after falling asleep. Ming's heart beat fast, his body was stiff, and he didn't move. This woman really surprised me all the time. But am I special? Was this unconscious movement in her sleep something that only happened to him? Or does she do this to every man? Thinking of this, Ming's heart was more like being scratched by a cat, itching unbearably. Ming was not sleepy at all. He held the woman in his arms, and his thoughts had completely flown away. The night was silent. When Lily woke up, there was no one beside her. The seat beside him was empty and cold. Lily sat up. She was only wearing a thin shirt. Looking at the position beside her, she was slightly stunned. She clearly remembered that Ming slept here. Could it be that she remembered wrongly? Last night, he seemed to have hugged her. Just like before, he hugged her to sleep. Just like before, she leaned toward him. It was a comfortable habit. But where was he now? Ming had a habit of lazing in bed. Usually, when there was nothing to do, he wouldn't get up very early. He looked at the time. It was 8 in the morning. The landlady's daughter, Xiao Shui, looked at the tall and straight figure standing in room 403. She couldn't move her eyes away at all. His eyes lit up as he watched Ming walk around and pack his things. He approached him and asked, "Mr. O, is Lily really not going to stay here anymore? Did she say she wanted to move? What a pity. If he lived here, this man might come here often. Although he was already taken, it was still worth it to be able to see such a man every day." Ming nodded gently and said, "We're going back to Kingstown. We've troubled you during this time. Dash." Chapter 860. I see. Snowy was disappointed, but she quickly put on a smile and said, "Then I will ask my mother to settle the account for you." "There's no need for that." Ming picked up the notebook that had been on the table for a long time. There was a clear outline of a face on it. Ming's eyes darkened slightly. Looking at the lines, he said, "You should have signed a contract with you. The rest is the deposit, right? Since it was a breach of contract, you should keep all of it." While speaking, his eyes did not move away from the notebook. The strong and clear outline on the notebook, with only a few strokes, was very vivid. It was Ming. At the bottom, there were 2 small and cute babies with big round eyes, lying in the swaddling clothes. Looking through it, there were a lot of random drawings in the notebook. Some were intentional, and some were scribbled. At the same time, there were also a lot of words. "Life is worse than death. I can't stand it anymore." The black ink had solidified. Ming looked at the words, and his eyebrows were full of complex feelings. So, after writing this, she committed suicide? Noticing Snowy's gaze, Ming closed the notebook and put it in a small box. He said, "I can clean it up myself. Thank you." Snowy blushed, nodded, and said, "Okay, then when you need me, you can find me. I'm next door." "Okay, thank you." Ming smiled politely, and soon Snowy went out. After Snowy left, Ming picked up his phone and called Su Qianxi. Su Qianxi had just finished washing and picked up the phone when she saw the phone ringing. "Hello, sister-in-law, this is Ming. I know what's wrong. I'm outside right now. Go check on your Lily and take her to eat breakfast." "Well, okay." Su Qianxi responded and had put on her shoes. After a pause, she suddenly thought of the conversation with Lily yesterday and called, Ming. "Yes. Do you know why she aborted the child?" Ming heard the words, was silent for a moment, and then said, "Because it was my child. Because it was his child, so she did not want to keep it." Simple, rude, and hurtful reason. Su Qianxi heard that and chuckled. Li Xiqing walked out of the bathroom and heard her laughter. He looked over curiously and asked, "Who are you talking to?" "Oh Ming," Su Qianxi said to Li Xiqing. Then she smiled at Oh Ming and said, "Did Lily tell you that?" Oh Ming felt that her smile was a little ambiguous, so he nodded and asked, "What did she say to you?" "Hey, when are you coming back? I think it's better for you to say some things to Lily face to face, but you can't reject Lily based on your own understanding. Lily looks strong on the surface, but she's very sensitive. It must be because you're not good enough to her, so she's hiding it from you. If you don't ask, she'll definitely tell you." Chapter 861. Su Qianxi had never seen how bad Oh Ming's mouth could be. However, what Oh Ming said yesterday was enough to make her angry. In addition to Li Xiqing's words, Su Qianxi had already silently labeled Oh Ming as a bad mouth. Li Xiqing heard Su Qianxi's words and felt a little funny. Oh Ming's mouth was not bad, it was mean. Su Qianxi quickly hung up the phone. Seeing that Li Xiqing was still in his nightgown, she said, "I will go see Lily first. You can come to the dining room later." "Okay." Li Xiqing rubbed her hair, bowed his head, and said, "Kiss me." Su Qianxi looked disdainful, turned her head away, and ignored him. She picked up her bag and left. In front of Lily's suite, Su Qianxi rang the doorbell. After a few seconds, Lily opened the door. Her short hair was half wet, and she was wearing a bathrobe. When Su Qianxi saw her, she smiled and said, "Oh Ming asked me to take you to breakfast. Let's go." Lily blinked and felt a little surprised. She asked, "Oh Ming asked you to come?" "Yes," Su Qianxi said as she got in. She looked around and said, "How did you sleep last night? Is the room good?" "Well," Lily closed the door and said casually, "It's okay. I booked the room." Su Qianxi said with a proud look and whispered, "How about last night? Did you say anything to him?" "What can I say?" Lily chuckled and looked down. "What are you thinking about?" She didn't say anything to him, but Oh Ming did say something to her. Some words that made her feel very hurt. Su Qianxi smiled ambiguously, raised her eyebrows at her, and said, "Didn't you?" Lily saw her expression and reached out to push her face. She laughed and said, "Go away. I just got out of the hospital. What are you thinking about?" "Oh." Su Qianxi looked like she understood. "I see." Lily saw the regret on her face and was speechless. She rolled her eyes and said, "Where did you learn that expression? You're so mean." Su Qianxi laughed and once again raised an eyebrow. "You learned it from a children's Uncle Luo Zhan. It's really cheap, isn't it?" At the same time, Luo Zhan, who was far away in Kingstown, sneezed. The soybean milk and fried dough sticks in his mouth all sprayed out. On the other side, Luo Ran closed his eyes and gritted his teeth. The blue veins on his forehead bulged as he gnashed his teeth and roared, "Bastard!" Luo Zhan shivered and immediately jumped back. He waved his hand and shouted, "I didn't mean it. Someone must be scolding me. It's impossible to guard against it." Luo Ran held the cup in front of him and was about to throw it over. Luo Zhan immediately covered his face with his hands, closed his eyes, and shouted, "Big brother, you're a handsome man and don't hold grudges against me." "Oomph." Luo Ran put down the cup and looked at the breakfast that had been ruined by Luo Zhan in front of him. He pushed it away and said angrily, "Clean it up. I'm leaving." "Where to?" "A date." After that, Luo Ran picked up a coat and opened the door to go out. Luo Zhan was disdainful. Seeing the mess, he couldn't bear to look at it and looked away. Chapter 862. He sighed in his heart, but soon accepted his fate and slowly cleaned up. Before he could finish packing, his phone rang. The name was Ruolarola met Lu Yihan at a party organized by his colleagues last time. She had a great admiration for IT men who worked in the computer industry. Especially for Luo Zhan, the famous Z, there was a kind of fanaticism that was almost like a brainless fan. From the day they met, she started a crazy pursuit of Luo Zhan. It was said that it was easy for a woman to pursue a man.
Luo Zhan did not have much feelings for this girl, but he had been single for so many years. He was not in a hurry, but his family had been anxious. One by one, they urged him to find a girlfriend or a wife. Coincidentally, there was such a girl, so Luo Zhan reluctantly followed her. In a popular saying, it was above friendship the kind of boyfriend and girlfriend who had not confirmed their relationship. Picking up the phone, Luo Zhan said while cleaning up, "Hello." Ruola was a typical southern girl, speaking softly. Hearing Luo Zhan's words, she asked softly, "What are you doing?" "Cleaning the table. I just had breakfast." When Ruola heard this, she exclaimed in surprise and said, "You actually know how to cook? That's amazing." "No, my brother bought it." Ruola's voice paused, and soon she laughed and said, "It's also amazing to clean up. By the way, today is Saturday. Do you have any plans?" "No." For Luo Zhan, he could only eat, sleep, play games, and work. There was nothing else to do. "Then, shall we go to the movies?" Ruola's voice was shy and excited. She asked carefully for fear of being refused. Luo Zhan clearly noticed her nervousness. He looked at the time and said, "It's too early to watch a movie. Why don't we go to the amusement park?" "Okay," Ruola blurted out with excitement, but soon her voice lowered and she said, "Don't you like to go to that kind of occasion?" "I don't like it very much," Luo Zhan said honestly. "But don't you girls like it very much? It's a rare weekend. Let's go together." Ruola felt like her heart was covered with honey. She nodded and said, "Well then, see you later." "All right." Luo Zhan hung up the phone. When he was about to take the dishes to the sink, he suddenly slipped and fell backward. Ping, 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 lang, a clear and solemn voice sounded sorrowfully. Luo Zhan fell on his back and grimaced in pain. He got up and looked around. There was actually a small puddle of white soy milk at the place he had just stepped on. "Damn, Luo ran is too much." "Hiss. It hurts." Looking at his elbow and body, Luo Zhan stood up to check. He took a deep breath and patted himself with grief and indignation. When he saw the debris on the ground, he suddenly felt terrible. When she lived with Lu Yihan, why didn't she have so much trouble? Sigh. After cleaning up, Luo Zhan lazily dragged his tired body into the room to change his clothes. Lu Yihan was playing golf with a client today. They arrived at the resort club early in the morning. As soon as they got out of the car, they saw a high-profile Maserati parked at the entrance of the club. This car model looks familiar. Glancing at the license plate number, he suddenly felt more familiar. A man wearing a knight's leather coat came out of the Maserati. He looked like a real person. Then he walked to the passenger seat, and a hot beauty got out. Chapter 863. As if feeling Lu Yihan's gaze, Luo Zhan quickly turned his head and looked at him. Lu Yihan raised his eyebrows slightly and looked at the girl next to him teasingly. Luo Zhan smiled slightly, looking quite pretentious, but as if he didn't know Lu Yihan, he quickly turned his head to look at the girl next to him, took her hand, and entered the club together. Lu Yihan looked at him, pretending to be stupid, and inexplicably felt suffocated. He laughed angrily, but quickly threw the key to the doorman, turned around, and walked in. The client arrived quickly. Lu Yihan ate with the client first before going to the golf course. However, coincidentally, when he was playing golf, Lu Yihan saw Luo Zhan again. Luo Zhan was standing behind the beauty, his arms around the beauty's body, and his hands were holding the beauty's hands. He didn't seem to be impatient with anything before. His eyes were gentle, and he was patiently teaching her how to play. He looked very skilled. But when did Luo Zhan start to play golf? Lulu. The client called him a few times, and Lu Yihan suddenly came back to his senses. He smiled and turned back to play with the client again, but he was not as focused as before. His eyes looked in the direction of Luo Zhan from time to time, and he seemed a little absent-minded. About half an hour later, the client was called away by a phone call. After Lu Yihan sent the client away, he was originally ready to take the car and leave, but when the doorman asked for the car, he stopped and walked back in. Luo Zhan and the girl were still in the golf course, but the actions of the beauty seemed to be much more skilled than before. Undoubtedly, Luo Zhan was a good teacher. But when did Luo Zhan learn it? Looking at the skills, he didn't look like a novice at all. Just when Lu Yihan was about to go up and say hello, Luo Zhan suddenly hugged the girl, looking ambiguous and very close. It seemed that there was a chance. Tut! What happened to being a single dog? What happened to not flirting with girls? He didn't look like a novice at all. Lu Yihan suddenly felt a feeling of being cheated and inexplicably uncomfortable suddenly filled his heart. Looking at it, Lu Yihan finally didn't go up, but turned and walked out of the club again. Luo Zhan accompanied Ruo La to watch a movie. The movie was chosen by Ruo La. It was a romantic literary film that was very popular recently. But after watching for a while, Luo Zhan felt bored. Sitting in the seat, drowsily, Ruo La next to him quickly noticed, gently pushed him, and Luo Zhan immediately woke up. However, to Ruo La's surprise, Luo Zhan's first sentence was, "I want to eat fish with pickled cabbage and chili today." But after saying it out loud, he suddenly realized that something was wrong with the surrounding atmosphere. Ruo La blushed and nodded. Okay. On the big screen in the cinema, the couple was hugging each other and crying their hearts out. Low sobbing sounds could be heard from the surroundings. Yura, who was in front of him, also had tears in her eyes, and she looked very pitiful. However, Luo Zhan suddenly had a feeling of displeasure in his heart. Baffled, she was filled with shame and anger. Chapter 864. Luo Zhan stopped and stood in the same place. Ruo Zhan tried to pull him but failed. She turned back to look at Luo Zhan and asked, "What's wrong?" Luo Zhan shook his head gently and said, "No, I just suddenly remembered that there's something that hasn't been solved yet. Why don't you ask your best friend to have a meal together? Or you can go back first. I need to go back to the company to take care of something." Ruo La felt a little disappointed when he heard that. But seeing Luo Zhan's expression, she nodded and said, "Well, then don't work too late. Remember to sleep early at night." Okay. Ruo La looked at him with some reluctance. With a light step, she came in front of Luo Zhan. Luo Zhan was a little surprised and looked at her in surprise. Ruo La's hands gently leaned on his shoulders, and the soft touch made Luo Zhan feel a little strange and magical. Ruo La blushed slightly, stood on her tiptoes, and kissed him gently on the lips. Luo Zhan was stunned in place, but Ruo La didn't dare to look back and just walked away. Looking at Ruo La sprinting back, guilt and self-blame surged like a tide. Ruo La was a good girl, but he didn't deserve her. He stood on the street in a daze. After a long while, he picked up his phone and called Lu Yihan. Lu Yihan was driving. He glanced at the car phone, saw the name displayed, and picked up the phone. "Hello? Lu Yihan, are you free?" "What? Tell me if you're free first. Tell me what you want first. Let's eat together." Luo Zhan's voice sounded a little helpless. Hearing this, Lu Yihan seemed to have guessed something. There was an 80% chance that he wanted to introduce his girlfriend to him. However, Lu Yihan still pretended to know nothing and said, "Oh, okay. Then let's have dinner together. Where are we going?" Luo Zhan thought for a moment and said, "Let's go to your house. I want to eat your fish with pickled cabbage and chili." "Damn, you can't do this, Luo Zhan. You still want to exploit me?" Lu Yihan laughed angrily. "Do you want to present me with borrowed flowers?" Luo Zhan was silent for a moment. "Is this how you offer Buddha with borrowed flowers?" That didn't seem to be the case. However, he had never been good at understanding idioms. This, Lu Yihan, was much better than him. It shouldn't be wrong, right? Luo Zhan thought about it, pretended that he knew everything, and said, "Sort of. Will you do it or not?" "All right, I'll congratulate you. I'll go buy some groceries first. Wait for me." After that, Lu Yihan hung up the phone. Luo Zhan was a little confused. Congratulate him for what? Luo Zhan's car had been driven away by Luo Ran, so he basically had to take a taxi today. It was a bit far from Lu Yihan's place, so it took 40 minutes to get there. Lu Yihan had already bought all the ingredients. Luo Zhan entered the password skillfully, and Lu Yihan was busy in the kitchen, clean and tidy. Louis Han's home did not look like a woman's home at all. Luo Zhan lay directly on Louis Han's sofa and slightly narrowed his eyes. Unknowingly, he had fallen asleep. In the dream, Ruola tearfully accused him of being heartless and playing with her. At the same time, the scolding and disappointment of his parents and Luo Ran filled his ears. Chapter 865. Then Louis Han reached out and pushed him, and Luo Zhan fell backward. His whole body jerked, and immediately he opened his eyes. Louis Han was shocked by his sudden convulsion, and after seeing that he was fine, he breathed a sigh of relief. He patted Luo Zhan and said, "How can you fall asleep like this? How tired are you?" Luo Zhan took a breath and sat up from the sofa. Louis Han saw that he did not seem to be in a good state and said, "What? Where's your girlfriend?" "Oh, I'll let her go back first." Louis Han was dumbfounded and said incredulously, "No way, I made so much delicious food. I just wanted to get to know your girlfriend. You actually let her go back? Why do I get to know her?" Luo Zhan sat up straight. "Maybe tomorrow she will not be my girlfriend. I don't think we are suitable. D*MN. Weren't you two fine in the morning? You even hugged each other and played basketball. I thought you were going to get a room or something." Then he seemed to have thought of something and said, "Could it be that you dumped her because she refused to be with you? Scumbag." Luo Zhan said, "When did I go to play basketball? Did you see it wrong?" "Damn, I don't know you. How could I see it wrong?" "You must have seen it wrong. I didn't play basketball today." Luo Zhan stood up and went directly to the bathroom. After coming out, he shouted, "I'm starving. Let's eat." Louis Han thought of this morning when Luo Zhan pretended not to know him, and he pouted. After washing his hands, they went to the table together, and Luo Zhan ate happily. Louis Han ate slowly and said, "Seriously, you can't play like this. Girls have to be pursued slowly. Who can stand it if you ask to get a room all at once? By the way, this girl should not be the same as the nightclub girl you had last time, right?" Luo Zhan ate and listened with a confused face. "Don't pretend to be stupid. I saw it twice. I don't know how many times I didn't see it." "Louis Han, you must have." He saw it wrong. However, just when he was about to say it, Luo Zhan suddenly remembered. "Luo Ran, where are you going?" "Date." Thinking of Luo Ran, Luo Zhan snorted, looked at Louis Han, and said, "I know. The person you saw was not me. How is that possible? I'll recognize you even if you turn into ashes. Do you really think I'm blind? Or do you have a twin brother?" Luo Zhan was silent for a moment, then let out a long hiss and said with some embarrassment, "How should I say this? I didn't want to tell you, but since you asked, then I'll admit it. What? I do have a twin brother. He just came back from London some time ago." Luo Zhan snorted and said with a look of disbelief, "Then why have you never mentioned it before? Why should I mention it? It's not a big deal anyway." Luo Zhan didn't care at all. He took a sip of the pickled cabbage soup and said, "He has his parents, and I have mine. We don't have many opportunities to see each other all year round. Even Ming and Lao Er rarely see him, let alone you." Chapter 866. Louis Han was worried that he would not be able to finish it. Unexpectedly, most of it went into Luo Zhan's mouth. He said he was here to eat, and he really came to eat. After Luo Zhan was full, he helped clean up the dishes and did not say a word. After cleaning up and washing the dishes, when Luo Zhan was ready to go back, his phone rang. It was Li Xiqing. "Lao Er, come to Palace 1. "Okay, but I have eaten." "If you want to eat, you don't have to wait for me." Luo Zhan was a little sleepy after eating and yawned. Suddenly, the voice on the other side suddenly changed, and it was Ming's voice. He said, "You are familiar with Lu, right? Ask him to come with us." "Why?" Luo Zhan was a little puzzled. But soon, there was a flash of white light in his mind, and Luo Zhan immediately understood and asked, "Is it the woman surnamed you back?" "Yes." All the causes and consequences had been connected, and Luo Zhan immediately knew what it meant. Glancing at Louis Han, who was sitting on the side playing with his mobile phone. He said, "Oh, you can rest assured that Liu Yihan does not like that woman." Liu Yihan heard his name, turned his head, and looked over a little confused. However, Oming did not explain much and said, "Just come over." After that, he had hung up the phone. Luo Zhan was a little helpless, looked at Liu Yihan, and said what Oming said. "Well, anyway, I have nothing to do." Liu Yihan stood up and said, "I'm going to change clothes." At 1 o'clock in the afternoon, in the capital, Oming came back with a lot of things from Yulili, all of which seemed to be more meaningful. After returning to the hotel, Yulili just came back after eating with Su Qianxi. Seeing the pile of things that belonged to her, Yulili was a little surprised and felt very close. She took the phone, turned it on, and went to play with other things. Oming watched her quietly hide the notebook before looking at other things. His eyes were slightly deep, and he took the lead to say, "Let's go back to Kingstown today." Yulili heard that, slightly stunned, thinking that she had heard it wrong. She looked up and asked Oming, "What did you say?" "Go back to Kingstown and stay in the Shishan Villa." Oming sat on the sofa and slowly unbuttoned his cufflinks. "You seem to be good at drawing. Why don't I arrange a job with comics for you?" There was a comic website under O Group, which was mainly a charging channel for wireless clients. Yulili had already heard of the website's high potential, but to directly give him a position, wasn't this the legendary backdoor entrant? Wait, how did he know that she was good at drawing? Yulili subconsciously looked at the notebook that she had secretly hidden. Here, after her diary disappeared, it replaced it and became a new diary. It had always been by her side. Oming probably saw it. In addition to the text, there were also many illustrations. Many of them were human faces, and Oming was undoubtedly the one with the highest appearance rate, and Liu Yihan, second. Oming squinted at her and said, "You still like that Liu Yihan?" Yulili didn't know what he meant by that. She looked at him anxiously. "What are you afraid of?" "I won't eat him. I don't really like him. In the past, I especially liked this type of boy, but now I don't like him anymore." "Is that so?" Oming's voice was low, and the meaning was unclear. Chapter 867. When Oming heard those 3 words, it was as if he had heard something funny. A pair of peach blossom eyes looked at her, and his smile deepened. He gently took off his coat, and his voice seemed to be careless. He said slowly, "If I understand it correctly, the so-called jealousy should be an irrational behavior of a person who is unhappy, angry, uneasy, or even angry when his lover faces another person of the opposite sex." Jealousy was jealousy. After being translated in this way, Yulili suddenly felt that the words suddenly became lofty. He continued, "And you? Do you think that you are my lover?" Yulili was stunned when she heard what Oming had said. Obviously, he was not. Yulili originally wanted him to shut up, but she did not expect such a reply, and suddenly became embarrassed. She thought that he would be the passive one. However, Oming's rank was obviously much higher than he had imagined. Oming's eyes looked at her and smiled, slightly raised his eyebrows, and slightly raised the corner of his mouth. "You are just my lover." After a pause, he added, "There can be many lovers, but there can only be one lover." Yulili's heart was suffocated, and she felt a sharp pain. Lover, lover. It seemed that there was only a difference of one word, but the difference was like heaven and earth. In order to get, the person who paid money was a lover. In order to get, the person who paid sincerity was a lover. Yulili never expected, but facing it like this, she still couldn't help but feel pain. What a knife. "Oh, he?" Yulili looked at Oming with an indifferent expression and shrugged. "I already knew it. It was just a joke. But you're so serious. I'll think you're hiding it, Mr. O." Oming's expression was obscure, and he said with a faint smile, "It's best to say it clearly, so that you can stop thinking about something that doesn't belong to you." Yulili's face was even more terrible. Oming acted as if he didn't see it, looked around, and said, "Go pack up and go back to Kingstown in the afternoon." While speaking, Oming had already stood up and entered the bathroom. Yulili looked at Oming's back, and her lips were pressed into a line, and her face was slightly pale. Looking at the notebook in her hand, Yu Lily sat on the bed and flipped through it. She had bought this book back when she was in Kingstown. Because it looked very beautiful, Yu Lily bought it without much thought. Occasionally, he would scribble on it. It was a very thick book. It was a beautiful steel plate with a thick hard paper cover. It was hard to tell how much paper was inside. On the last page, a name card was drawn. Dr. Jean Baiha was the chief physician of obstetrics and gynecology at the First Hospital of Kingstown. At the bottom of the business card, Yu Lily had clearly written a few words. "I'm sorry I couldn't protect you." Seeing these words, Yu Lily felt a lump in her throat, but then she closed the book and stuffed it into the box on the side. Ming was in the bathroom, leaning against the glass cubicle with his phone in his hand. Looking at the business card taken on his mobile phone, Ming thought for a long time before he opened WeChat and sent it to Su Chung. Editor, Yu Lily. Su Chung immediately understood and replied, "Okay, check it right away." Chapter 868. Yu Lily was a little surprised by Ming's thoughtfulness. He actually found the things for her. There was a wonderful feeling in her heart, which was quickly fermenting. Looking at the familiar things, Yu Lily began to pack her luggage. Ming walked slowly to the bed, picked up the computer on the side, and quickly typed on the keyboard. Yu Lily looked up at Ming, and her movements became slower and slower. After thinking for a long time, she said, "Didn't you buy Lida's company? Can you help me find my things back?" Ming glanced at her from the corner of his eyes. He turned his eyes back to the computer screen and said casually, "Didn't you say that you didn't use my computer? How did you know that I bought that company?" Yu Lily was slapped in the face, and her face became hot. It was rare that Ming didn't take advantage of the situation. He looked at her red face and asked, "What things?" "The diary." Yu Lily looked at him and said hesitantly, "The blue diary is the one you read before, the diary that was taken away by Lida." Although she didn't know what they were going to do with it, that diary was very important to her. Thinking of the day that Ming smashed the diary on her wall full of photos, Yu Lily had an indescribable pain in her heart. He didn't finish reading it. If he finished reading it, he would definitely not be like that. Ming looked up at Yu Lily and said, "I found it." Yu Lily's eyes lit up. "Where?" "It's gone." Yu Lily was stunned and asked, "What do you mean by gone?" "I didn't find it. It was torn up by Lida's wife." Ming's people left several times, and then Ming let him see the technical loopholes of his company materialize and then be destroyed by Lida himself. In less than 3 days, the value and reputation of the whole company had plummeted. But no matter how much Lida begged for mercy and cried, he couldn't take out the diary. The life of this small company had come to an end. Hearing that, Yu Lily was disappointed, but at the same time, she expected it. "Oh." Yu Lily lowered her head and continued to pack things. There was a brand new box in the room, which was just sent by the waiter. Yu Lily had bought quite a lot of things yesterday. When she packed them up, it was just enough to fill a box. While stuffing things into the bag, Yu Lily was still a little unwilling. She turned her head and asked, "That diary, where did you read it? Does it matter where I see it?" Ming asked. Yu Lily pursed her lips, looked down, and shook her head. "It's not important. Anyway, it was already like this." Yu Lily's heart was slightly disappointed. She turned her head and continued to pack up. Ming raised his eyebrows. It seemed that there was more to the diary than met the eye. What a pity. But when Ming looked at Yu Lily, who was quietly packing her luggage, especially when he saw her folding her clothes, he felt inexplicably happy. In a place where Yu Lily couldn't see, he smiled slightly and lowered his eyes to continue his work. When they arrived in Connecticut, it was already 5 or 6 in the evening. Li Siqing and Su Qianxi were about to go home, but were stopped by Ming. Chapter 869. Old Friend. Yu Lily suddenly thought of Louis Han. Seeing Ming's ambiguous eyes, Yu Lily felt a little repulsed. This guy, is he going to use Louis Han to deal with me? What does he want to do? While bullying me, he is also going to hurt Louis Han. Yu Lily felt that Ming was despicable and shameless. When she met his intense gaze, Yu Lily pursed her lips and braced herself to say, I don't have any old friends. You know that I don't have a good relationship with anyone in Kingstown. Are you very popular in the capital? Oming asked. Yu Lily was speechless, glanced at him, smiled, and did not answer. Oming asked Li Siqing to call Luo Zhan and then went to Palace 1. They got a private room together, eating and singing. After ordering, Su Qianxi dragged Yu Lily out to sing. After the food was served, Lu Yihan and Luo Zhan also arrived at the same time. While Li Siqing and the others were eating, Lu Yihan and Luo Zhan began to sing while waiting for them to eat. Oming was the first to eat. Elegantly and slowly wiping his mouth, Oming walked to Lu Yihan calmly. Yu Lily saw his behavior and was inexplicably nervous. She stared at him for fear that he would suddenly punch Lu Yihan. Oming was also paying attention to Yu Lily at the same time. Naturally, he had seen all her reactions. With a cold smile, Oming sat not far from Lu Yihan. He said, I heard that you have a project and are looking for investment. Lu Yihan heard the words and looked over, quite surprised. Yes, it's a mobile game. I know, I have heard about it. Your project is not bad. How about telling me the details? Lu Yihan did not expect that Oming would be interested in the project of his small company. So, he specifically called him over to tell him about this project. However, O Group is such a big company. As the boss, Oming must be very busy. How could he have time to pay attention to such a small person? Lu Yihan knew that there must be something wrong, but as a small and medium-sized company that had just started, Lu Yihan naturally would not miss any opportunity. What's more, if he could cooperate with O Group, then his reputation would definitely be great. Invisibly, his company would certainly enter the vision of various companies. In this way, his future development would certainly be much more convenient. Undoubtedly, if he could really climb up the tree of O Group, it would be beneficial for Lu Yihan. Immediately, she gave Oming a detailed explanation. Luo Zhan was no longer singing, and their voices were clearly heard by everyone. Yu Lily's heart skipped a beat. She suddenly understood why Oming suddenly called Lu Yihan today. This was a demonstration to her, and at the same time, a warning to her. For a company like Lu Yihan's, if Oming didn't want it to exist, he could just say the word. Oming had done Lu Yihan a favor on purpose in front of her. Naturally, he could destroy it at will. Yu Lily was not a fool. She put down her chopsticks and felt a little uneasy for the rest of the time. It was 2 hours later. Lu returned. Chapter 870. However, the furnishings and furniture in the villa had all been changed. The diamond-shaped sofa in ancient European style, the simple retro brown and yellow wallpaper, and the thick ancient European pattern carpet. Even the style and color of the interior lamps and chandeliers were different from before. It was strange. However, the villa was filled with the owner's wealth that exceeded that of ordinary people. Such decoration was too ordinary. If she didn't know that she had lived in this villa before, she would really think that she had walked into the lobby of a luxury hotel. It was not like Oming's usual style. Yu Lily dragged her suitcase in and walked back to the master bedroom with ease. However, the mattress in the master bedroom had also been changed. The complex retro color, dark green and dark yellow intertwined, was strong ancient European style. Yu Lily hated this color, especially the color of the bed. Looking at it, she even lost the desire to sleep. Yu Lily heard footsteps behind her, and she turned to look. Oming walked over slowly and said, "You go to the next room to sleep first." The indifferent command made Yu Lily feel like she had been trampled under the foot of the dog. Next door was a guest room. The opposite was the second bedroom. Oming actually let me sleep in the guest room. Yu Lily looked at the master bedroom and asked, "Is this where you sleep?" Oming should not like this kind of pattern. In his words, it was old-fashioned and vulgar. When Oming heard that, he glanced at Yu Lily and said, "Anyway, it is not yours." Yu Lily immediately understood. Since Oming said so, naturally, it could not be his own. So, there was someone else living here. Even the decoration of the living room, and so on were done by that other person. But who could it be? Oming had a lot of houses under his name, but only the villa in Shishan was used by him to raise a woman. Lily had stayed in this canary's cage for 3 years. In that case, the other person must be a woman. Don't tell me, it's that Miss Shun, that fiancé? Lily looked at him with a sneer and said, "Your private life is really rich." Oming glanced at her and chuckled. "Why, are you jealous?" Lily smiled and looked at Oming with a pair of beautiful big eyes. She asked, "Oming, what is our relationship?" Oming put his hands in his trouser pockets and walked over. His smile didn't diminish. He raised his eyebrows and said, "Didn't I tell you earlier? You're my lover." TSK, if I remember correctly, you just said today that this so-called jealousy is the irrational behavior of a person when their lover is facing another person of the opposite sex. Since they are in a relationship, why would I be jealous? Lily's eyes were contemptuous, but her heart was stuffy and depressed. Lover? She still became his lover. Didn't we agree not to repeat the same mistakes? Why did everything change again unknowingly? She turned around and pulled her suitcase to the guest room next door. There was nothing in the empty room. Lily's heart ached even more. How a man treated a woman could be seen from the details. Obviously, Oming didn't plan for her and brought her back just like that. Chapter 871. In any case, Lily couldn't resist the man's coercion. Resigned to her fate, she went to find the bed and put the quilt on it. The spare bedding was very clean, and it was obvious that someone always took care of it. This villa had not been empty in the past 4 years. Lily was not very comfortable, but on second thought, it seemed that she was not qualified to interfere with how many lovers he had or whether he had a fiancée. She was just one of his lovers, that was all. Just after Lily dragged the suitcase away, Oming turned his head and took a deep look at the master bedroom, with the same unhappy look on his face. He picked up the phone and called the nanny, Nanny Zhou, who had already gotten off work. She quickly answered and shouted, "Master O, didn't I ask you to change all the things in the room? Why haven't you changed them?" This. Nanny Zhou seemed to be a little nervous and said, "Miss Shun didn't let me change them. A few days ago, the movers came, and Miss Shun directly drove them away. I can't help it, Master O." Oming's face became more and more sullen, and he said, "Who is she? She lived here for less than 2 months, and she made my place like this." In the face of Oming's obvious anger, Nanny Zhou didn't dare to say a word. Oming's tone was not good, and he shouted, "Now, come here immediately and change them." Yes, just after the phone was hung up, Oming put the phone down and walked into the room. He walked into the cloakroom, which was full of beautiful women's clothes and a few of Oming's clothes. With a black face, Oming clenched his teeth and fists, and he was furious. So dirty. He turned around and slammed the door. Just at the door of the room where Lily was, Oming's cell phone rang. Oming was about to open the door, and after taking his hand back, he picked up the phone. It was Su Chung. "Master O, I have found out about Dr. Jean Baiha." Oming stood at the door and soon turned away and asked with a cold face, "How is it?" "Dr. Jean retired last year, and now she is an honorary professor in a medical school. So, I found her now. About 4 years ago, Miss Yu once saw the obstetrics and gynecology department in her hand. I found Dr. Jin's file at that time, and I have sent it to you. There is a document in WeChat." "Okay, got it." With that, he hung up the phone. He opened WeChat, downloaded the file, and skimmed through it. This was Dr. Jin's casual note, and it had been saved into an electronic file. Lily had seen Dr. Jin twice. The first time was to confirm her pregnancy, and the second time was to consult about the fetus. Due to the pregnant woman taking too many contraceptives, the possibility of the fetus being deformed or mentally retarded is higher. It is not recommended to keep the fetus. When Oming saw these words, he felt as if he had been struck by lightning. Malformed fetus? Retard? What does that mean? Oming zoomed in on the document for fear that he might have read it wrong. However, after reading it over and over again, Oming held his phone with mixed feelings. Due to taking too many birth control pills, the possibility of fetal malformation is very high. So what did it mean? Did you Lily abort the child because of this reason? Lily is a good girl. There must be a reason why she aborted the child. No mother would abort her own child. Chapter 872. Really? What excuse did you come up with this time? A few days ago, just as you Lily was about to tell him the real reason, he had said that out loud. Because he didn't believe there was any other reason at all. Thinking of what he had said at that time, Ming wanted to punch himself. It turned out to be like this, it turned out to be like this. Ming's eyes twinkled as he stared at the words on the phone. Ming turned around and walked toward the room where Yu Lily was. When he opened the door, Ming had already walked into the guest room that he had just arranged for Yu Lily and found that she had already made the bed. Seeing him come in, Yu Lily just glanced at him and then continued to make the bed for herself. Ming's heart ached when he saw that. She was still like this. How could this be? Unknowingly, she had caused such a big change in his heart, but she didn't know it herself. How could this be? Ming stepped forward and grabbed her hand. Yu Lily was suddenly grabbed, and she was shocked. Looking at Ming in surprise, Yu Lily laughed and asked, "What are you doing?" But Ming didn't answer. He pulled her and then held her in his arms. Yu Lily was slightly shocked and surprised. "Yu Lily," Ming suddenly shouted and held her with both hands. He was still holding the phone in his hand, and his voice was a little hollow. "Let me ask you in the beginning, why did you have an abortion?" Yu Lily didn't expect that Ming would suddenly think of this question. After a moment, her mind subconsciously thought of the two children. Her heart felt as if it had been grabbed by a big hand, and it was very uncomfortable. After a little struggle, Yu Lily's eyes became red, but she sneered and said, "You won't believe me even if I tell you. Let me go." Hearing this, Ming felt that he was simply wrong. How much sin did I have to commit to make my image and her heart fall to this? Yu Lily struggled, but Ming held her tightly. He put his head in her neck, held her tightly, and said, "Yu Lily, don't move." Yu Lily was a little uneasy and asked nervously, "What do you want to do?" Ming couldn't have done this for no reason. Ming was silent for a moment, then said, "Tell me, why did you kill the children? Why?" Yu Lily stopped struggling. Her eyes were hot and red, and her throat was choked. Ming's strength was very strong. He circled Yu Lily as if he wanted to embed her into his body. Yu Lily looked up and sneered. "Are you regretting it? You regret bringing a woman like me back to Kingstown, right? It's okay. I'll return your money to you. Let me go. I'll return it to you later." Ming's heart ached hysterically. It was that face again. Couldn't this woman try to tell him the truth for once? If Ming was still the Ming who didn't know the truth, he would have been enraged by her words. But now, all that was left in Ming's heart was heartache and self-blame. But at the same time, he was angry at her attitude. He laughed angrily. "Let you die. I won't die in the future." Yu Lily secretly breathed a sigh of relief. That's right. The Ming just now was too abnormal. Yu Lily continued, "I still owe a lot of debt, and I can only die after I pay it back. So, don't worry that you won't be able to collect your debt. It's just a matter of time. Dash." Chapter 873. I will work hard to make money and pay off all the debts I owe you first. As for the medical expenses, what if I don't give it to you? Ming suddenly said, straightened up, and looked at her face. Ming's expression was unspeakably serious. Looking at her, his beautiful peach blossom eyes were even more beautiful at this moment. "You Lily, tell me the truth. Why did you abort the child?" Ming looked at her with a pair of serious and deep eyes, which made Yu Lily feel a little sad. She looked away and looked at the ground, saying, "Don't ask. You won't believe it. Maybe you will think that I made up an excuse to deceive you." It has always been like this. Since they met 4 years later, he had a deep doubt about every word she said. He had long since lost all trust in her. What was the use of asking this reason now? He couldn't believe it at all. But when Ming heard Yu Lily's words, he felt that his heart was hit by something hard, and the pain was heartbreaking. Because the doctor said that the child was very likely to be deformed, so you aborted the child, right?
Ming's hands squeezed her shoulders, and a pair of eyes stared at her, as if he wanted to see through her. Tell me honestly. Lily heard the words and looked at him incredulously. When Ming saw her expression, he already had the answer in his heart at that moment. It's true. Yes. How can I believe such a reason? Could it be that the diary had something to do with this? The diary that Lily has been concerned about should be about this reason, right? If Lily told him herself, or if Ming saw the contents of the diary, Ming might not believe it completely. However, Su Cheng was his man, and the results he found would certainly not be false. It turned out that Lily hid such a deep and big secret in her heart. Lily's face, which had been calm, suddenly shed tears. Seeing Ming's obviously very serious face, the little umbrella in her heart, which had been held for 4 years, collapsed in an instant after seeing his serious and compassionate expression. Lily's breath was short, and then she broke down and cried. Ming's heart felt as if it had been pierced by a steel needle. Blood spurted out, dripping beautifully. He pulled her into his arms and hugged her. His throat choked, and his eyes were slightly hot. Holding her, he lowered his head and whispered, "Why didn't you tell me? Why did you keep it from me? Lily, you are too selfish." His voice was choked with sobs, and his big hand rubbed her short hair with more force. The pregnancy, the possible malformation, and the abortion. Why didn't you tell me a single thing? Why did you wait for me to find out, for me to ask you, such a big secret? How did Lily manage to deal with all these incidents one after another? Moreover, he had done so many outrageous things. He was simply worse than a beast. Chapter 874. Second brother's wife is pregnant, and it's twins. She shows off to me every day. When we have twins in the future, at least don't lose at the starting line. Ming's words seemed to be ringing in her ears. His words were full of longing and hope. Until now, Lily still remembered them clearly. Every time she thought about it, she felt that she had committed a heinous crime. Now, Ming found out what was going on, which made Lily feel even more guilty. She moved her hands up from his chest and wrapped them around his neck. She choked with guilt and said, "I'm sorry. I didn't mean it." Ming's heart ached when he heard that. He hugged her tightly and whispered, "Promise me that if anything happens in the future, you must tell me. Okay? Tell me, and we'll solve it together. Don't hide anything from me in the future. Okay?" Only in this way could Ming not make mistakes. Only in this way could Ming be with her for a long time. He wanted to be with her. He really wanted to be with her. Lily's crying gradually stopped. After a hard yawn, she wiped her tears with her sleeves. She gently pushed him away. Her eyes were red and swollen from crying. She looked up at Ming. At that moment, Ming's eyes were also red. He looked at her and put his palm on her cheek. He gently wiped away her tears and whispered, "Promise me, okay?" Lily almost cried again. She wiped her tears and nodded. She wanted to say something, but she was already sobbing. Lily nodded and didn't say a word. Ming smiled and whispered, "Let's go. Don't live here. I'll take you to the apartment in Yanjing." "Why?" Lily looked up at him and asked. Ming looked at her and said, "It's more comfortable there." Lily looked at him and didn't ask any more questions. She nodded. When they arrived, Lily found that it was one of the new buildings opened by the Lee Group in recent years. It was a prime location and expensive. It was a luxury apartment on the 28th floor. Lily watched Ming enter the password and walk in. When he opened the door, he clearly found something unusual. There were signs of people living everywhere. The living room was very clean, and there was a faint fragrance in the air. Ming dragged her suitcase to the bedroom. Lily walked in and found that the iron suit and shirt were all neatly folded. Everything was very neat and orderly. Every corner had an unparalleled taste and comfort. There was no doubt that Ming lived here. "I live here?" Lily stood at the door of the bedroom and looked at Ming inside. "Isn't this your room?" "Yes, we'll live together." Ming helped her open the box and took out the things inside one by one. "We'll live together in the future." Lily's eyes were hot, and she looked at him. In the past, He and she had always lived in the villa in Shishan. Now that the villa in Shishan had changed a lot, he brought her here, living together. Then, what would be the relationship between them in the future? Or was it a lover? Was it the relationship between a kept woman and a kept woman? Lily looked down. She wanted to ask, but she was afraid of thinking too much. She went forward and hung the rest of the clothes with Ming. Lily's movements were much faster than Ming's. Obviously, Ming had never done such a thing. Dash. Chapter 875. Unpleasant sexual experience, sexual behavior, sexual injury. Ming subconsciously thought of the time in the bar in the capital when he made her look bad in public. Hey, Ming felt a headache and scratched his head. He was very annoyed. Is it because of that? After that incident, Lily tried to commit suicide several times. Now, she is actually suffering from sexual apathy. Ming felt that it was not an exaggeration to be cut into pieces. What should I do now? Sexual apathy could be a big or small thing. If every day was like today, Ming knew that he would not be able to bear it. Turning off the computer, Ming went to the bed and looked down at Lily, who had fallen asleep. After lying down with some annoyance, he held her and closed his eyes. The next day, as soon as Lily opened her eyes, she saw Ming putting on his clothes. Ming looked at her while fastening his cufflinks and said, "Let's go to the hospital today." Lily looked at him with some doubts and asked, "What are we going to do? I suspect that you have sexual apathy and you're too thin now. Go and get some tonic to take to nourish your body." While Ming was talking, he had put on a suit. The burgundy suit had clear lines and a nice style. The familiar color made Lily sit up and shake her head. "No, I'm just in a bad mood recently. It should be fine in a few days." Ming glanced at her, not fully believing her. He looked at his watch and said, "Well, I have a shareholders meeting at 10 o'clock. I'll go first. Remember to eat breakfast." This way of getting along seemed to be the same as before. There was no change. Lily felt warm and nodded. "Okay." Ming came over and kissed her gently on the face. Then he walked out. After Lily washed up, she suddenly realized what Ming's words meant. Sexual apathy. Sexual apathy? What? Lily suddenly realized and thought of her state last night. It seemed a little, but wasn't sexual apathy something that only very old people would have? After washing up, Lily went out and picked up her mobile phone to search on Baidu. After reading the introduction, Lily felt a little inexplicable. Isn't it normal to be in a bad mood and not want to have sex? How could he suspect me of sexual apathy? However, this couldn't go on. She was too useless now. Could she only rely on Ming for a lifetime? Lily's computer had already been smashed. Now there was no computer around, so she had to take her mobile phone and find a job for herself. Suddenly, he saw a comic book advertisement. After he clicked on it, he saw a huge recruitment notice for a comic book artist. Lily saw it and clicked on it. At a glance, she saw a variety of comics displayed inside. The style was so ugly. Cartoonist recruitment, a promising future. Lily clicked on it and found that many comics were not as good as hers. Moreover, this website was also a new website. When Lily clicked on it, she was surprised to find that it turned out to be a new site under the O Group. Could it be that the comic book job that Ming said he would arrange for her was here? Lily added the website editor's QQ, and it was quickly verified. Lily, hello. Chapter 876. Cartoonist. These three words had absolutely nothing to do with her now. Lily felt a little embarrassed and replied, "I'm just interested in drawing, not a cartoonist." Sisai, well, we have a scriptwriter here, but we are short of cartoonists at present. Can you show me your drawing style? Lily, okay. Lily found the book she drew, took a picture of it, and sent it to her. Sisai, great. What's your major? Lily, computer. Sisai, haven't you learned painting? Lily, no, I'm just interested in it. Sisai, great. I'll give you a script. You draw first, and I'll have a look. Lily, is it an interview? Sisai, no, I just want to see more of your drawing style. We now have a plan to train cartoonists. I think your drawing style is very beautiful and refined. You can give it a try. Our full-time cartoonists have a basic salary. Here is the welfare information. You can have a look. Yuli, okay. She clicked it, and it was the welfare plan of this new website. Full-time cartoonists had a guaranteed basic salary of 3,000 yuan, and there was a share of sales, which was 50% with the website. If they could reach the level of a star work or a blockbuster, the monthly income could be as high as 100,000 yuan. Lily was stunned and couldn't believe it. After reading it, she swallowed silently and replied, "What if they can't reach the level of a star work?" Sisai, then you can only get a guaranteed basic salary of 3,000 yuan. 3,000 yuan. If she was asked to find a job, the salary might be higher, but Ming would not let her find a job elsewhere. In this way, she could only work in O Group, and the salary she got would be much higher than that of ordinary people. At that time, she looked glorious on the surface, but those who flattered her on the surface actually looked down on her. Lily knew it clearly. After thinking for a while, she decided to give it a try. Yuli, I see. Let me see your script. Sisai, document. Lily took the document, opened it, and looked at it. He was immediately shocked by this plot. The plot was about a Chinese girl who returned to China as an exchange student. However, on the first day of school, she was hit by a boy's basketball. The boy apologized to the female protagonist, and the female protagonist was gentle and generous. After accepting the boy's apology, she became the talk of the town. It turned out that this boy was the school hunk. From then on, many girls started to find trouble with her. But later on, the boy tried all sorts of ways to protect the girl. In the end, he fell in love with the girl and confessed to the female lead. After that, the female lead was targeted by the campus belle, Green Tea Bitch. After that, she was targeted in all sorts of ways, and they fought to the death in school. What the hell? Are all manga plots like this now? Lily's lips twitched, and she typed, "Will the plot of such a comic be popular?" Sisai. This is an old trick, but tricks have always won people's hearts. Try drawing it first. Yuli. Okay, Lily knew that her resistance was futile, but she had to try anyway. Lily picked up the pen and began to draw seriously. After about an hour, Lily drew a grid. Because there was no prototype, Lily drew Su Qianxi. After taking a picture and sending it to Sisai, Sisai quickly replied. Chapter 877. Lily laughed out loud. She didn't expect Su Qianxi to be so famous. Yuli, because there is no prototype, I drew her. Sisai, be careful that she asks you for copyright fees. Yuli, no, she's my friend. Sisai, haha, don't brag like that. Who is Su Qianxi? She is the boss of the Li Group, a strong woman in the business world. Is she a friend of this person? Sitting in the office, Yi Qianqian pouted. Seeing this reply, Lily knew that this person definitely didn't believe it. But this was the truth. Lily felt a little embarrassed, touched her nose, and also replied, "Haha, Sisai, don't use real people as prototypes. You should design your own characters. It doesn't matter. We can teach you. You can also make your own original cartoon." Yuli, original cartoon? Sisai, yes, it is your own idea, your own style, and your own story. In this way, the copyright fees will be very high. Yuli, okay, Sisai, you can use the digital tablet to draw. We will upload it directly to the internet. After the drawing is done, you can directly upload it. Yuli, okay, Sisai, your drawing style is very good, but you can't use real people as prototypes. Remember, even if you make a prototype, don't draw the face. It is too dangerous. Yuli, okay, Sisai, you could try it. If there is no problem, we can discuss the signing process of a full-time cartoonist. Lily was shocked and replied, "So soon? Sisai, you have great potential. Come and try. I can teach you after signing the contract." Yuli, well, let me think about it first. I don't have a digital tablet yet. I have to buy one. By the way, how much is a digital tablet? Sisai, you can buy one for more than 1,000 yuan to practice. When you get the royalties, you can buy a better one. if you draw half to death, and the royalties are not as expensive as a digital tablet, how miserable it will be. It was only after Yi Qianqian sent the message that she realized she had said something wrong. She added, "You can use one that costs more than 1,000 now." Yuli. Okay, thank you. Yulili thought about it and checked the digital board on Taobao. But she didn't even have 1,000 now. Ugh. Yulili was really destitute. She took the phone and fell on the bed. She flopped on the bed. What to do? Just when she was still distressed, her phone suddenly rang. It was an unfamiliar number from the imperial capital. Who is it? Yulili answered the phone. Hello. A woman's voice came from the other side. She sneered and asked, Are you Lily? When Lily heard his tone, she immediately became alarmed and asked, Who are you? My name is Shun Manting, Ming's fiancé. I heard that you came to my villa last night. I want to see you. I am at the Starbucks on the first floor of Hingyuan Square. I will wait for you for half an hour at most. Please be sure to come. The arrogant tone made Lily sneer. She was a little disdainful. She rolled her eyes and said, Who do you think you are? What if I don't go? Chapter 878. Oh, is that so? Lily raised her voice as if she was very interested and asked, What is it about? Ha! You'll know when you get there. I promise you won't be disappointed. Shin Manting chuckled and looked like she was going to win. His tone and attitude made it clear that he was certain that Lily would come. Oh, I see. Lily nodded and looked serious. Well, wait a minute. I'll be there soon. Okay. Shin Manting was very satisfied with Lily's understanding and said, Ming likes obedient women. No wonder he likes you so much. After that, she hung up the phone. Lily looked at the phone and sneered. Naive. After saying that, he blacklisted Shin Manting's number. When did Ming like obedient women? Lily tilted her head and thought for a moment. She suddenly felt that Shin Manting was a little sad. She shook her head and then continued to browse Taobao with her mobile phone. Shin Manting sat in Starbucks for half an hour, but she didn't see anyone like Lily. Shin Manting furrowed her delicate eyebrows and felt a little displeased. She picked up the phone again and dialed Lily's number, but it showed that she was not in the service area. What happened? No signal? Shin Manting dialed again, but the result was still the same. At this time, even if Shin Manting was stupid, she realized that Lily had blacklisted her. Shin Manting was furious. She angrily hit the table and gritted her teeth. Many people turned to look at Zhang Xian. Shin Manting's face softened a little. She stood up and quickly walked out of the coffee shop. Lily looked at the time and was in a good mood. She read comics on her mobile phone and quickly browsed the current popular comics rankings. She just read half of it, and soon there was another call from Mystery. It was also an unknown number, but the place of origin was Kingstown. Even if she thought with her knees, she knew who the caller was. Although Lily was in a good mood, she didn't want to answer at all. Lily rejected the call and directly blacklisted it. On the other side, Shin Manting was so angry that she gritted her teeth. This woman dared to play with me like this. B*TCH. She started the car and drove to Ming's company. Ming was busy in the office after the meeting. Suddenly, someone from the secretary's office came to inform him, Master Miss Shun is here. Hearing this, Ming frowned and said, I'm busy. I won't see you. The secretary was a little embarrassed and continued, Miss Shun said that she has something very important to tell you. She seems to be a little angry. Why don't you see her? When Ming heard that, he smiled coldly. He looked up at her and asked, Who are you working for? Hearing this, the secretary nodded and retreated, closing the door behind her. When he walked out, he saw Shun Manting sitting in the living room, drinking the best coffee with her legs crossed. She was wearing a beige fur coat. Her curly hair was tied up, and her exquisite makeup made her look charming and sexy. She was as beautiful as an Asian lady. However, such a woman had a bad temper. You're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity, through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.